A rumoured counter-protest, which we're going to find out shortly. It's been a while since I've had a stream. See everyone. Hope you've been well. Not doing too much more streaming lately because, well, some of the more recent protests have been a bit rowdy for me. Just, what can I say? Things change. Things change. I got tired of going to protests which were oppositional. Okay, this one. I'm not going to go too close to it, after all. Plenty of ABC crew here. There's the ABC journos, 3 journos, plus staffer. 7, 9, 10. All the good guys.
I am privileged
all the crew.
to be the sum total
a bit of a wander around.
The fighters in our family.
Feel free to drop a message, tell us how you are. Some of it does surprise me though, compared to previous years. It's,
William Ferguson to the mission of to talk about the conditions our people lived under then. Now, of the men of 1938, I have a particular soft spot for William Ferguson because he was the one that came to Iran mission back then. That was my grandmother.
Smaller than previous years,
that invited him up there.
Paddy Gibson, UTS Professor of Indigenous Studies.
It's a history of resistance
long-time organiser of these.
From Wintertime to today.
Especially through
we
BLM.
will not lay down our arms. We will not stop our fight for what is right on our own land. We will not teach our children the generational lies, the generations of lies that have been taught to other children in this country.
He's going to dive straight in.
The basis of the terra nullius, no land belonging to no one. The fact that they didn't consider us human beings is the greatest human rights atrocity of all of it. And that today we even have problems with people understanding and wanting to embrace our culture and our knowledge.
SBS.
That comes from within, deep in the soul. And it's something you can't explain some of the times. And the rage and the anger that it brings to it a lot of times is the rage from old people that watched families be killed. Whole families.
Not sure. A single person today that doesn't necessarily want to talk.
A definition of a massacre.
I've done some Australia days before, some invasion days before. It's not a day for conversation. It's not a day for conversation.
Understand the truth that we speak to you.
I expect a fairly trouble-free day today. Not too much is going to go down.
It has been underwritten by white Australia for a long time. The fact
there might be a little bit of hullabaloo at some point.
They go from one end of the country to the other and kill in large numbers. It didn't matter if it was a baby. It didn't matter if it was an old person. It didn't matter if it was a young person. They were all.
See if we can find people with some signs. At least people. G'day.
By the killers that came. We need to understand that history. We need to understand that the killers still live amongst us. There are good people and there are bad people in every culture. We need to weed out the bad in the white.
A couple of guys here doing it. 2 SBS crews here.
That's the history that I will maintain. What they did before us, we will come again.
Jews against the occupation. Jews against the occupation, please.
Yeah, before you do that, can you take my photo home?
What other signs do we have? Invasion Day, not Australia Day.
You're all posing.
Socialist Alliance. Now, numbers are still pouring in, so while we might look at the numbers and say there aren't that many around, I'm certainly surprised by the crowd. Didn't see that. I was surprised. It is still early, and the numbers still keep on going. So, give it a bit more time, we might see more. Plenty more. Save the Gomeroi, land the Pilliga. They've got a wireless hookup, so you got an audio relay just over here.
The date, Australian Day, I think is ludicrous. Whether they hold on the 31st of October. It's like the old woman who cried, someone close it, but it's
Go and have a listen to some of the speeches. I don't actually think this is being, if it is being live streamed.
It's the same kind of thought. We need to wipe this day entirely, as opposed to changing the day. We're down here, and it's been, I think, about 10 years before I've been invited to a program, which is fair at the moment. Yourself and Jenny and Gilla.
Demographic, currently young, white, say 60, 65 female.
We tell our stories.
Still a lot of yes shirts and supporters around. Some masks around. Masks around. COVID safe. Remember that guy? Oh, that's fantastic.
Of course, when we dance at night, it doesn't make us any more Aboriginal. Whatever instrument we play in our land, it doesn't make us any more Aboriginal. Tolerate the different and random. Yeah, that's the boomerang stuff, you know. And that's been part of our lives. This Commonwealth still got the important four names that came from my arm.
Always was, always will be. Chant of the day. How do you vote about it? SRC? New Sydney? Playing solidarity with the Palestinian cause. There you go. There's a lap. Organised, that these protests tend to be fairly organised and cooperate well with the police. Some good Oh Christ, look at the number of cameras on right up the front here. Everyone's ready to get a shot. Look at this. Media. So the gaggle of media. Independent, freelance photogs here. A few flashes around. Everyone here to get the shot. Just put my watermark on. Since they're being stolen. There you go. Geez, the volume's low.
A small version of what's going on in this country. We had an explosion of deaths from the year 2000 onwards. The majority of deaths are related deaths. This has been going on for 25 years.
This is going to go into the coverage.
They haven't got money like previous years. Not at all. They do not have the money like previous years. Last year was lead up to the voice vote, but this year, they do not have the money. It's a sixth rental truck, which is standing on the back of.
Now, with this loss, 6 people in the first month of the year. And the last 2 years, we've lost 100 Aboriginal people in Pomeroy country, in Morley, as we go about and we talk about the voice, while we go on about reconciliation, while we go on about always was, always will be, was time, everyone
Still coming
can
in.
go
Still coming in.
and say, well, no more evidence of the voice last year and the failure of that. We marched the first no vote at Lara, and there was no such conference at Uluru. Not once did we go to Uluru, other than the first day that we were invited out there at the beginning. And then we saw the opposition coming from the Indigenous people about our presence there. It was quite freaky. It was quite freaky. You know, they had the old here with the bus of 60 or country. The bus drive with all these pretty young Asians and they're in their monkey suits. Come on. See the play.
If you're hoping for conversations today, not going to have any. This is a pretty quiet live stream. Honestly, just checking in. Might read some comments in a bit, but
The first no vote, not to cover the yes vote or the no vote, it was simply no vote whatsoever. No such procedure. We went up there to talk about the recognised campaign. That went off the table immediately. We were then renewed Australian Plan B, which was their conspiracy from the start. They knew we had met the numbers. They knew we were 0.3% of the population. 50% of us are not even enrolled. However, they went ahead with it thinking that all Aboriginal people agreed with it. Well, I'm here to tell you that they didn't. If you look at the formations of the first statutory black organisations in this country, like the NACC and the NAC and ANSI, that those governments at the time allowed us the democratic process, at least, of electing our leaders to this statutory body. And those leaders, whether they worked with ANSI or not, their energy flowed into the streets, and the Conservatives come together with the Radicals.
audio is pretty terrible. I'm surprised. It's quiet.
We have to start talking seriously about where we are here. There is no other chance for me than there ever has been. There is only one chance, and that's what we want. What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? We know we own the country. It was and always will be. So we got no fucking land. The world is emerging on our country. We're going to have to cater for the Pacific Islanders when their land goes underwater. We're going to have to cater for the Torres Strait Islanders too when their land goes underwater. We'll be accommodating all those people that are getting out of the weather patterns at the moment. They will all come to one place in the south. There is only one place in the south, and that's our country. We have to start thinking seriously about the future of our young people. Scientists are saying that within 10 years, our young people may not be able to play in the sun. That's the reality of what the white man has done all over this world. They have destroyed the world, and now comes the day of reckoning. So what can I say to us? We've lived through ourselves, and we live through this one. Because there's more fires than that. And our fires will continue burning whether we like it or not. And as to the thing about fires, I'm doing the first time you've done it. We said it straight.
But I asked you.
It's time we got back to what the people wanted. It's called land rights. We have not got land rights. We have made some other inroads during the struggle. And I'm reminded of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of our comrades who are not here with us. The Aboriginal Legal Service, for example, has lost some people.
70 people from the board of directors and the workforce here in the legal services. That to me is a travesty. And those pictures float by my window. Most every holiday or when I'm resting, all those images float by my window, and I'm reminded of the brave effort that those before us were willing to take. Our struggle emanated from Jack Pack and Bill Ferguson. For people like Faith Bandler, there's no Faith Bandler was involved in that referendum last year. That's why it failed, because they never had people like Faith Bandler and Charlie Perkins, those people who were willing to put their lives on the line for what they believed in. And some did. You know, I'm reminded of the shooting of Jesse McIntosh in Moree on the 5th of November 1982, when we were set up on an ambush by 3 white regiments of the town who fired over a volley with some 20 shots into us from 40 metres. They were 30-30s and 22. The first fucking 30-30 killed 50 instantly in that lane that night. And 2 others were shot. A young man was shot through the stomach and a sister was shot in the shoulder. All this is going on in a little town called Moree. If we're losing 100 of our people a year, Walgett's losing 40, Bogabilla's losing 30, Mungandai's losing 20, then we've got Gunnedah, Tamworth, Corona, Werris Street, Narrabri. We've got all these towns, and all these deaths are related to cancer. We talk about the insecticides that America is still allowed to peddle throughout the Western world. All these insecticides have been barred in America. We have the classic case example over there with 2 old women who were mucking around with the pesticide for 12 months. Roundup. Our people are still living in Roundup. Our people are still using Roundup. That's a pesticide that is not legal in this country by the Americans. So this shit continues. We see what's going on in the Middle East at the moment. You know? And I'm reminded of the Jewish reporter who persisted with the young Palestinian about what happened on the 8th. And the young Palestinian responded, and the 9th, and the 10th, and the 11th, and the 12th, and the 13th. That's what's happening. You're massacring our people. And we're going to solidarity with our brothers and sisters. But hey, that's nothing new. We have slaughters going on our doorstep with our brethren there in the West Papua. You can walk to New Guinea in the Torres Strait. That's how we must the disadvantage and
You find each other. Yeah, it's beautiful how that happens.
All Australian Prime Ministers, from Doctor to Ron, turned a blind eye to what was going on in Timor. They turned a blind eye, and they still turn a blind eye to what's going on in West Papua. You know, how history was based on the revolution of the world. It was difficult at the time because we didn't have the technology, but we maintained contact with the revolutions of the world. And one of the things that's very live in this country at the moment is you cannot have a fucking revolution without the people. And that's what went on last year. You know, NITV, I hope you're here, they should be reminded that they were the only media barred from the whole process at Dilara. There was no other media barred other than our niece and nephew who were made to stand outside and cover for NITV the whole procedure because they were barred simply because they were 5 minutes early with the deadline of information going out. We don't really know what happened at Dilara.
Yes.
But the flush resorts at Dilara are somewhat different to what's going on at Mutijulu. I remember Brother Murray George and them demanding that the word Uluru not be used in the statement. They ignored that old man. They ignored the catalyst for the intervention, the people from Mutijulu. And it was a disgrace, it was shameful. They put fucking payback on me and Jenny up there. They put payback on us up there. And we told them, from here on, all roads are south. you have to come to our country. And we haven't forgotten it, and we won't forget the voice, and we will deal with the repercussions of the voice. That left us stranded in no man's land. Our people were confused. Our no vote should have got to the table as soon as possible. We should have had the right to go back to our communities now that the narrative was changed. We had the ridiculous situation where we had to sit there in the workshop and they came out with all the questions on the workshop. This is what we need to be answered. This time the workshop never came from the floor. It was very much controlled, and that was evident with the State Land Council facilitating of the two conferences here in New South Wales, in Dubbo and Sydney. Sydney went with the yes vote, Dubbo never, neither did the whole state of Victoria, or neither did the whole state of Canberra, because they were only allowed one conference in their countries. So it might have been 15 of us that walked, but the representation there was two states and the biggest country town in New South Wales in Dubbo. We went with a no vote from the start. That was the mandate we were given. And we weren't there representing the community. That was another one of their bullshit lies. You know? We were all selected personally, handpicked for these two conferences. The only mandate we went with is the mandate that we were given for these conferences. And the only way we, Billy and I, attended the conference in Dubbo was that there was a brother of ours that had a medical view of place ours. We made sure that the radicals were invited to that conference. And the radicals ended up doing the relegation of them, didn't they? The radicals ended up doing the relegation of Dubbo. They went up there with a clear no vote for everything. Our no vote was then allowed to be a certified to Senior Price and Warren Mayberry. And the rest they say is history. No! All this bourgeois, all this shit that's been tried over the past 20 years without the narrative of land rights has dismally failed. It is still failing us. We are still losing people in Moree to cancer, which will keep us correlated with everyone who's working on the cotton. We are still working on the cotton, our people, because there's no other place to work. But keep in mind, history, all our people before 67 worked in the farming industry, and not one of them died with cancer. The industrial cotton in the Commonwealth country, we're probably losing about 300 farmers a year in the middle of this country, going unseen and unnoticed. We are telling our history in Moree through eulogy. And the cancer-related deaths there are not concentrated on one particular age group. They're children, they're young people, you know, they're grown up, they're elders, all dying with cancer-related illnesses. What is NAPCO doing? What are the health organisations doing? We were quite blunt yesterday. We had some 40 people there as an audience and 400 hooked up from government departments. They let us speak for 2.5 hours, me, Jenny and Michael, and we told them our history in the struggle, what the struggle meant, who sold out in the struggle, who did this, who sat in the streets and watched us, and now inherit our positions that we made available. The struggle is not dead. The struggle is alive because people like us are still alive. I know now proverbially you can count us on your fingers. That's how many of the rest of us. I just gave an indication, 70 from the leadership. All brave people who stood in the front line of the struggle in every march in New South Wales, every embassy that was established in 72, must go part to the East Coast. We have to gain relievers. We have to go and get together the power of the East Coast. Because we're the same as Bud Moss. I'm not a traditional man, I'm a Conroy man. I'm not a traditional man. I was born in the contemporary Aboriginal Australia. We have a culture too. It's called a culture of existence. Because when the white man invaded here, he had no knowledge of what was going on here. He abided by the international concept of discovery. And with that came the concept of terra nullius. Terra nullius existed in the world since the 15th century. It took a little black man from Ware Island to change all of that. He got rid of terra nullius. He was the only one that did it since the 15th century. That's quite an achievement for talking mother. Even though I disagree with the legacy that's coming out of here for main title, and we are persistently talking with mining companies in the Commonwealth country to no avail. They do like rough job. The only difference is the Maori council is all vision has put a moratorium on mining, and that's been the situation for 15 years. So if Narrabri, Gunnedah, Boggabri, and all other towns south would have said no, there would have been a possibility that there'd be no mining in Commonwealth country. And it's an example set by the Maori Council. You know, and I think that is an example that should have been adhered to by all those towns in the south who community got in touch with the mining company. And we had our people finding the work in the country for it. So there's this quagmire that's been created, and it's a quagmire of silence. And we've all got within us an element of silence, you know? And I think we should be aware of that silence, because lots of things emanate from that period of silence within one side. We should be aware of it. It can make you do things that you're not accustomed to. It can make you do things that you don't want to do. And by the way, last year as well as the 100 deaths, our kids burned down 80 houses. You people know what the fuck is going on in country towns like Morley. Our kids up there can't go to the hospital to get a plaster on their legs and arms. They have to go to Canberra. Not only that, they have to book with the specialists in Canberra to get their limbs attended to. So at times we've got kids and our people walking Morley with broken legs for 67 years. Broken arms because we've got no access to the medical fraternity. They shy us away. My personal experience with the medical fraternity. 2 years ago I went there for a colonoscopy. I've had 5 colonoscopies in Sydney. I woke up with no fucking sleeve. I was rushed to Canberra Hospital leaving to get in the helicopter, waiting in the operating theatre, and still no one has told me how they fucking restored my sleeve in a colonoscopy. That's why I look like I am. And that's just one of the examples. If they can do that to people like us, they will run roughshod over our people. Get it together. The market should be land rights now. There should be no other narrative from here on. Otherwise, we have gone against the spirit of all those who walked before us, all those who gave their lives for what they believed in. As you can see them on the front lines of market, the majority of these like still officers and families and staff. That's created a nuisance for all our markets, because the legal service could always come up with 2 field officers cards. You know, that's something. You know, every time it's 88, and the nucleus then grew. That's how we maintain the markets. That's how we maintain the market's respect. That's how we march the town hall and listen to our elected speakers. There is no one elected today. All those are appointees either from government, you know, and they've been running Rothschild for the last 20 years that we're unaware. Just like we are unaware of what's going on in Moree now. We have just buried 6 people in 9 weeks. We are continuously raising money for funerals in Moree at 11,000 a pop. You know, that's $66,000 here in 1 month. And we've got another 11 months to go. And I'm afraid that our town, that hangs over our town, is hanging there, and it will hang there for some time. Unless people like us are aware of what's going on with our people in the country areas of New South Wales. All our rivers are poisoned from cotton spray. All our rivers run into the Darling. That's how the Darling becomes poisoned. Because all our rivers are poisoned. The Namoy, the McIntyre, you know, all the other rivers are running. Anyway, that's not speaking for the day. It's nice to be amongst you. Fuck this country. Fuck this country. Fuck this country.
As a especially about what's happening over there in Palestine as we speak. We have, and Jamila, thank you very much for talking to me about the issue of Gaza and Palestine.
If you can hear them, you're doing better than me. I can't hear her. I can't hear her down there.
Thank you very much, sister. Well, let's hear it, Jamila. Come on. This country!
Text me.
Australia! What is Australia? Australia Day is dead! Let's forget to welcome the beautiful brother all the way from Australia and now the country to do proper thing up of country for us, to make sure the ancestors are really here, everything we do Elder speaking, the wind star, the ancestors are listening. So now we're going to do Neenan, Simpson, we're going to do a smoking, we're going to play some gigs to sing up the ancestors. So please everyone, just have a little moment of reflection of what you just heard, and reflection of what you need to do for the next 364 fucking days, and the next part of your whole life. Yeah, everyone! My name is Gwen Stanley. I'm the representative of the Aboriginal community. We need to remind us that there is unfinished business. We this is a day of mourning for the Pomeroy. Your 80th regiment came into my country and paid by the West Coast to murder and massacre my people. Because we were outside the county, the colony. We belong to the land of the Interior. We are the mighty Pomeroy. They boarded the 80th Regiment to come in and do a puny retribution against my people. For several years this took place. That same regiment then went on to create the sheep wars in Sudan. That same regiment then went up to Africa and created the Chocolate Wars. They same people today are called the New South Wales fucking police force. Remember that. They are responsible for that. There is unfinished business. This is about land rights, restitution, justice and liberation. I have invited you today. Lovely Auntie Elaine, the mother of Terence Briscoe, killed in Alice Springs. My sister Megan, Samantha, come up here, and Nadine, the mother of Cleveland Dodd, and the mother of Annalise. These are the families that are still fighting for justice. You see Eddie Murray there, in 43 years. Commission after commission, and we are still getting fucking shit. We have the illegal cracker from the National Suicide. Suicide is on the rise. Why? We are being dispossessed.
I got a 200 watt second flight.
I am going to end the night over, but we've also got families. The families help these people. These people are still living on basic cards up in the territory. They are still being controlled by government. I am now going to hand you over to my beautiful sister, Megan Cracker.
We're just going to do the acknowledgement of the country first before we pass the microphone to Auntie. We walk with our ancestors, past, present and emerging. Our ancestors are the ones that have fought for us, that have led this platform, like Uncle Lyle said. William Cooper, Jack Patton, the Doug Nichols. The first thing that we have to do is respect Gadigal land. Gadigal! When you come into a boundary, you're going to ask respect to come into that boundary. It's a part of LORE. And a part of our journey today is to educate a lot of people on our journey. So our rivers is by Army's footprints. The connection to our rivers is the Georges, then the and the Hawkesbury. We put our handprints and our footprints into this land. We pay our respects to our people. Like Uncle Lyle said, once our waterways are dead, we're all dead. Shade!
Shade!
Louder, people! We also walk from the rivers to the sea like our Gaza people who are going through genocide. Babies under the rubble. Shade! Penny Moore wants to go over there to Israel. We say her name's Penny Wrong. And a part of the respect is that we pay our respects to the north. Everyone, please, to Bunjalung. Louder, people, louder. Bunjalung. I can't hear ya. Kambengi. Louder. The Dungari. The Biripi. The Awabiko. The Wanarua. The Darkinjung. The 29th Wales from the Eora Nation, the Gadigal. The Bidjigal. The Demaringo. The Wongo. We pay our respects to our surrounding areas, which is the Turek, the Gunnedarra, the Darwell. We pay our respects to the south, which is the Wadi, the Wandian people, the Yuan people, the Black Duck people. We pay our respects to the west, which is the Ngunnawal, the Ngambria, the Barkindji, the Kamilaroi, the Wiadjuri, the Waywan, and as far as Yorta Yorta, always was, always will be, always was, always will be, Aboriginal land. On behalf of elders past, present and emerging, welcome!
I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. Absolute pleasure, privilege and honour to be here and stand with you fellas in solidarity. Can I go to the Aboriginal Cancanity mob up here, please? This government, Linda Burney, the Minister for Indigenous Affairs, I will call it out for what it is, because I see black suffering every single day. The suicide awareness is not on par with suicide prevention, and we are losing people left, right and centre. We have gone from 1 in 23 to 1 in 16 First Nations people taking their life. That means it's a lesson to our people taking their lives under the age of 44. That is not the society that we want to live in. And I dance to the tune of the oppressor. I dance to the tune of the oppressed. I work with the National Suicide Prevention and Trauma Recovery Project across all issues. Suicides, incarceration, deaths in custody, child removals and the likes. Homelessness. We know that in terms of First Nations people right across this country, we fall below the poverty line by 40%. In Western Australia, that racist fucked up state that I come from, it is 60%. Child removals, which is aching through all of our hearts, through every single black person's heart. 2,000 black kids in 1997 when they had to bring in them home reports, that were removed. 2008, when the Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, made his apology to the stolen generation, there were 8,000 black kids in care. And today we have a staggering 23,000 black kids in care. The Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody, we the political will, so we must compel the changes. And that comes through the voices of the people. The young ones, the older ones, they spoke up about their abuses, their atrocities while being incarcerated. And I also pay acknowledge to the 132 prisons right across the country, 17 youth detention centres where a lot of our people are right now. A lot of us are born into racism. That's the reality. A lot of us are born into poverty. That's the reality. But this government, they criminalise poverty. I pay so much respect to Nadine Dodd. Nadine, she lost her boy. The Youth Detention Centre in Western Australia, Banksia Hill. The first young person to die in Western Australia. Cleveland Dog. And we fought and we fought and we fought, and this family, they hurt. Like all of our other families in relation to black deaths in custody, where we are being denied justice. And we are fighting so hard to get a conviction. Cleveland passed away in October, and we smashed it and smashed it and smashed it in the media. We held a protest. The young ones spoke up, the older ones spoke up, the families spoke up, and now we have a coronial inquest that is set for April. And come with us, stand with us, stand with us. The other thing in relation to Cleveland, because of the fighting in the media and because of feet on street there, the government, they had to come forward because what they said initially is that in a report and every 15 minutes there is meant to be a check of the young person in the cell. And they had that marked right up until 6 o'clock in the morning. The government, the workers at Banksia Hill, Unit 18, which is in Casuarina Prison, they had it marked till 6 a.m. in the morning. This little boy was taken to the hospital at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock that morning. The government got caught out in a lie, and what happened? They came out publicly, the minister, and said, we take full responsibility for the death of Cleveland Dodd. We cannot fuck around with these institutions. We need to hold them to account. Samantha, her mother is going to coronial inquest in February. In February, she lost her 11-year-old girl to suicide in October of 2020. 5 months prior, her ex-partner, he also passed away to suicide. Suicide is thematic right across this country, and we need to push back and say to the government, enough is enough. We will not stop fighting, and we'll fight you till the days that until the cows come home, because that is the right thing to do. We're all impacted, directly or indirectly. I want to pay much more respect to Sister Gwenda Stanley for inviting us across to organise the ones over in Perth every year. And the Aboriginal Tent Embassy, it's an incredible honour to come out from WA and stand in solidarity. We hurt. Our hurt is your hurt. Our pain is your pain because we see it and live it. We've worked with the National Suicide Prevention Trauma Recovery Project with 28,000 people right across the country. But in terms of the way forward, we must do. We must continue to mobilise. We must continue to use our voices, because I'll tell you right now, in this so-called lucky country, which is the 12th richest economy in the world, there is a huge disconnect between black fellas. The haves and the have-nots, and there are more of us than what there are of them, and we must continue to fight back. Too many of our people want to speak for our people without even knowing our people. Shame on them. Love, honour, respect to you all. The brothers and the sisters in the prison system, love and respect. Whilst you're not here, we stand with you.
My name is Brady, and usually I'm in Canberra at the Aboriginal Embassy, so I took the opportunity to come down here to speak about the Aboriginal Embassy and who I represent. I'm the daughter of B. Brady, who's one of the first men that set the embassy up in 1972. And it's an honour and a privilege to be able to speak his name. And I'm also the daughter of Isabel Coe, who was one of the very prominent people who kept this movement alive. 236 years is a long time for the crime of genocide. We are here. We are proud people. I am Rodri. I am Gomeroi. I'm not Australian. I come from a line of people who were the fighters, and I'd love to pay respect to Pemawai, the greatest fighters of this country, Wicklow, and all those who followed. So I came in on Monday night and I walked into Victoria Park and I lit the fire. It's been 24 years since the Aboriginal Embassy has been set up in Victoria Park. We want to rename the park Isabel Coe Park. We want to start talking about decolonisation, not just here, but the whole world. Responsible for the crimes they commit against our people. No more. This is our platform here today. We ain't talking about mourning no more. We're not talking about survival. We're talking about sovereignty. Which is everything. We're talking about land rights, restitution, justice, and liberation. So yeah, I made it a priority to be here today to stand in solidarity with all our people here. And you know, all the issues that are affecting our people in this country, they need to start being addressed. Not just come in with your little cons and try to make out that we want to be reconciliate natives. You know, we're here, we're alive. I look around and I see all the young generations. I was them kids. I was them. I was the kid marching at the front, carrying the banners, singing out, land rights. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we got? Who owns this land? We do. We're here. We ain't going nowhere. Where we got to go? This is our country. Where's our respect? We did not have to compromise who we are anymore. This is our country. We can practice our culture. We can be who we want to be. Stop with the fucking lies.
In the Galilee Basin. We've been standing for 10 years right now against the Adani mining project. And we've stood strong and most things we will sit out there in the country. We went in there and we took our land back. We came from the 40th anniversary of the Pan Industry where they said go back and take your land. And that's what we did. We took our land back and they can't prove anything. They can't take our land back. We walk under the doctrine of laches and acquiescence. They've given up the right now to come there and take us to court. We've been there for 2 years, so it's our land. Everything that we see there is ours. We demarcated the Adani mining lease for our land. It's our land, what an undo. That's the talking. And we come out and we talk about this. We're going to tell the world. This is what we're talking about here. What, 1788? What? What's happened? They come across on a ship, on a boat. They brought the feudal laws. You know what I mean? That's all they brought here. They brought their parliaments. They brought their administrative law. They brought their government. They brought this, what they say now that we all have to live under. Legislation, acts of parliament and statutes. And these laws here that they made up is the law of man, not the law of the land. We're the first people. This is where the law comes from, the land. From the first people, from the custodians, the real people who are here. That's what we're talking about. Get rid of that. We operate on the first law, best in time, first of law. We're the first people here. And everybody has to start acknowledging that and respecting us. They respect the land, they respect us. Without it, you have nothing. This is the way, this this country's going. They gotta keep coming back to us. It's a revolution of thinking. You gotta start thinking the way we think and start protecting the land. Without the land, you got nothing. Without the water, we're all dead. We got nothing to drink. And we come from the water. We come from the Wunagara Spring. That's the spirit drinking. That's the water spirit. That's where we all come from. And that's what we're fighting for. We're fighting to protect. We're going to protect the Geopolitical Springs. It's an ancient set of springs that have been running for millions of years since the beginning of time. Not even CSIRO know where the water comes from. And so we're standing there strong for all people in this country, for all people in the world. And we have to stop that mine. And that's why we're doing it. 2 years we've been there standing solid. 10 years I've been fighting them. I'm fighting against the administrative law, the federal government, George Brandis, Malcolm Turnbull, all of them, right through Scott Morrison, all the way down. I can name them all. What they do, they change the goalposts every time. When we get too close to them, they change the goalposts and make up laws, these statute laws. We've got to go to the High Court. We've got to go to the High Court, 116 of the Constitution. This is who we are. It's our principle of what we live on. Land first. Land first. If we don't have the land, you got nothing. That's why they want to take our water. They want to claim all the water in the world. And that's why we're an obstacle to that. Our people. We all come from water. Okay? We've been in the water for like 9 months of our life. We all belong in water. We're freshwater people and saltwater people. That's all there is. I come from the freshwater and I respect all the saltwater people too. But I just want to finish this and saying this here. Every government in the history of Australia has failed Aboriginal people. And that's why we stand here today. And that's why you support us. Because they keep failing. They keep coming up with the wrong answer. Because they don't understand. We're the ones that know. They will never understand unless they come to us and consult the right people. Respect. Baramuli.
Just in regards to when we lead out the rally this year, banner will be on front line. After this banner, we will have Eddie and all the deaths in custody. So if you don't mind, respect that. These people need to be on the front line because there's still unfinished business. 236 years of it. Brother,
Following proper protocol, I'm this boy's auntie, so I get introduced to him. You see this young man here? I met him in 2015 as a young, broken nephew. He's the nephew of David Dungay Jr. Anyone who doesn't know that name, fucking Google it. Right? Understand, his uncle was murdered. Not killed, not a death in custody. His uncle was murdered in Long Bay Hospital on the 29th of fucking December 2015. I met this young man, as I said, a broken, grieving, traumatised nephew. And from that day to this day, he's been there for his family, for every other family, in every single local court, children's court, everywhere you need someone to fight, this young man is. Give it up for him! So now, I'd like to introduce to you, please, my beautiful nephew all the way from Dungay country, Paul Silver.
Thank you, Marnie. So my name's Paul Silver. I'm the nephew of David Dungay Jr. As Auntie Liz said, he was tragically murdered in Long Bay Correctional Facility in December of 2015. David Dungay Jr. was 3 weeks shy of being released to come home to his family. He had so much plans for his future, but that was taken away from us by 6 corrective officers, a corrupt government that doesn't care about Indigenous issues. And here we stand today, January 26th, a day that should not be celebrated, when our ancestors died and perished at the hands of the First Fleet. We are calling on the Albanese government to abolish the date. We don't want the date changed. There should be no such day when violence occurred on another human race, the traditional custodians of this land. As Indigenous people, we face racism on a daily basis. But today, we can feel the generational trauma that continues. It's important that non-Indigenous people understand why we as blackfellas want this day gone. As our ancestors sat there at their own comfort, they was then invaded. They was then massacred and killed. The people that come onto these lands and killed our ancestors didn't care. And remember, the everyday Australian says, oh, but they was just convicts. They was forced to do it. No, they was fucking human beings and they had a choice. We don't want a day of mourning. As Indigenous people, we want to mourn at our own comfort. And culturally, we don't need the rest of Australia celebrating a day that inflicts so much trauma on us. The constant oppression continues with Aboriginal deaths in custody, the forced removal of Aboriginal kids from their families, the destruction of waterways and sacred sites within Australia. The government allows this to happen. We as grassroots mob demand the government throughout the year. We don't just show up at protests. We want justice and accountability for the people that have died in custody. We want the 1991 Royal Commission into Aboriginal deaths in custody implemented. We want guards criminally charged, held accountable and thrown in jail, just as we would if we killed another human. Now it's one thing for the big supermarkets to boycott the Australia Day merchant, but it's another thing for the government to implement the abolishment. And that's what we want. We don't need supermarkets following our lead, we need government. And as much as Aboriginal people want the government to be abolished and we want to run our own country, we're not at that stage yet, but we're continuing to fight the fight. And once we get there, and Aboriginal people run the governments here on our own lands, it'll be much better for every person living here, Indigenous or not. There's also deaths and medical negligence within the healthcare facilities that expose Indigenous people to death. And the next speaker I'm going to invite is Uncle Rick. Uncle Rick Hampton is the father of Dougie. Dougie unfortunately died after being discharged, after attending Dubbo Hospital on a numerous amount of occasions. We believe that there were systematic failures and systematic racism that had taken place surrounding the circumstances of his death. So please make Uncle Rick feel welcome.
To follow. Mine's a bit more emotional. I just want to talk about the health system. 2.5 years ago, next month, my son presented himself at Dubbo Hospital. 12 minutes before that, he was walking along the streets of Dubbo and something popped inside of his stomach and dropped into the ground. He knew it was urgent, so he got himself to the hospital within 12 minutes. On arrival, he admitted that he had something pop inside of his stomach. He told him he had a 10 out of 10 pain. On triage, they got 130 beats a minute, and they decided to keep it for 19 hours. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, sorry. On the triage, they prematurely diagnosed him with cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. The reason being is he told them that he had a joint earlier that morning for his pain, because he had stomach pains. He didn't know something was going to pop. So they sent a black fella in the emergency department and they thought it was struggle later when it wasn't. Within 40 minutes of walking through them emergency doors, they sedated him. We still don't know why. My understanding, triage would take at least 20 minutes. You sit down on the chairs and wait for the doctors to come out. They called it a category 3. I don't know how it all works. But anyway, They sedated him. They kept him for 19 hours. They didn't give him no scans, no x-rays, no nothing. And, you know, when someone goes in and says something's popped inside, they've got all that equipment, why not use it? Because there was a black fella in the emergency department screaming, they need to shut him up. Like I said, they kept him for 19 hours in a sedated sleep, so he had no chance of advocating for himself. He arose when they checked on him, when they come around to do the checks and that, and he'd scream in pain when they walked in the room, and when they walked back out, the sedation just got rid of him again, and he fell back to sleep. It went on for 19 hours, but they kept him there. And after the 19 hours, they reckon the heart rate dropped back down to the normal rate, which is impossible, I've been told by emergency doctors. So our understanding there is that they've just sent that to get him out of the hospital. With that, he went back to a mate's place where he was in pain. He couldn't over for the rest of the night, and he was unresponsive the next morning. Since that day, I shot around over 200-300 emails trying to understand what happened with the hospital, this and that. We ended up getting an internal investigation. They admitted to being biased against my son. And we got in touch with the National Justice Project, which took us on, and we've been protesting, fighting, campaigning, meeting with politicians, doing everything we can to get an inquest, and we finally got one. And that inquest is in Dubbo for 2 weeks, next month on the 26th. So we're all a bit emotional at the moment, getting ready for that. He's screaming in pain, something's popped, why not fix him up? They just don't give us up, you know? What? My son was 36, he was a healthy man, there was nothing else wrong with him except for these 2 ulcers that burst inside of him. Now one ulcer ripped his stomach lining, the other ulcer ripped his bowel wall. When he was in that emergency department, he had 4 litres of waste inside his abdomen, and they couldn't find that. So for 19 hours in that sedated sleep while he's laying there, he's dying of poisoning. The heart rate never stopped. We had 1 or 2 nurses that reported to the doctor saying he needs to be looked at again, and all they come back with was, just keep monitoring him. So, you know, this country has got to wake up, really, it really does. You know, all the deaths in custody is disgraceful. That's been going on for years and years and years. I don't know why that hasn't stopped now. They even stopped the UN going into the jails. Why? What's the hide? They know what's the hide. That's why they don't let them come in. And you know, these health professionals, they just want to wake up. They take an oath to help people, and they just choose who they want to help and who they don't want to help. The systemic racism in this country is disgraceful. It's got to stop. It really does. It's just so emotional talking about it. But we've been fighting, and we've been fighting for justice for our son. Those who don't know the story or never seen it online, you can hashtag Justice for Dougie, or you can look up or Google Dougie Dubbo, and you'll get the whole fight we've been doing for the last 2.5 years. The inquest is looking good. We've been told by our solicitors and barristers. We're heading toward getting justice. We're hoping to have the doctors involved reported to the HCCC for disciplinary action. And the other part of our fight is making change within the hospital so our people feel safe when they go there looking for treatment. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, you know, if there's politicians out there and you're hearing this, start growing balls, make decisions, make changes, make us a fucking people too.
Thank you, Brother Rick, for sharing your trauma with us. And that's what today is really about to you, mob, you know, a day of mourning. We are here sharing trauma for 236 fucking years. Isn't it time that we stopped? Don't you mob get sick of hearing these stories of extra murders in custody, of our kids being stolen? Understand, we only make 3%. We're the First Nations people. It's only taken them fucking 8 generations to wipe out 97% of us. And as you heard Uncle talk about, how many are dying every year, every month? This year alone, there has been 2 more deaths in custody of young black men. And it's only January 26th. There's already been 2 to the book. That's only the ones that I know are being counted then again. There could be others. And next I get to introduce to the mic, sadly, another traumatised, grieving father of a young boy who was only 16 years old when police thought it was their right to take pursuit against him, which ended up he lost his life. And then the police came to the family with 2 different versions, as we've heard from every other family, of the lies and the corruption and the cover-ups when they kill one of our young kids. So please, make welcome and open your ears and heart to a beautiful brother all the way from Kempsey Dungari country, Lachlan Wright, who's the father of young Jai Wright.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
My name's Lachlan Wright. I'm a proud Dungari man from Kempsey and Bellbrook on the mid-north coast. I want to acknowledge that we're meeting on Gadigal land. Less than 2 years ago, I lost my son. Not far from here, on Everleigh, in Everleigh. Still struggling, so bear with me. On Monday, we've got that coronial inquest to find out the truth and try to get some justice. You go in with hope, but I'm not really sure what's going to come at the end of it. So we try to prepare ourselves for anything. He was 16, forever 16 now. You know, he's just like any of these other kids around here. He's always been to Survivor Day, always been to Yarburn since he was born. Went to school just over here at Ultimo, grew up around the area, but I'm just here to talk to keep his name going and his memory alive to all of you.
Justice! We want justice, brother.
We will eventually get justice.
We will. We're going to stay.
We will eventually get justice.
We're not stopping, brother.
We won't stop. There's no way we'll stop. We can't afford to.
That's right.
We've seen it happen in the past. With TJ, Hickey in Redfern. My eldest boy was born a couple of days after we lost TJ, and the lies that we heard of what happened with him, you know, how can that still happen 18 years later with my son? You know, not pursuing our fears.
Double deaths in custody, love my country, ashamed of my government. How you going? Hey Raoul, how's the protest going? You well?
Okay, we see now. Now we're gonna see.
Now it's busy.
Yeah.
It was quiet early, but they just had to come in.
No, the people is...
Now it's busy. It's
But
big.
it's happening in Palestine too. We start with people, what is people? It's not people, it's the room.
It's true.
Maybe we change it in this country. Hard to, please think about it, but it's hard to be...
Any trouble or all quiet? No trouble?
Nothing.
Beautiful. I'll leave you to it. See you, Raoul. Hey guys. Cuban flag.
As is the third, sorry, family members that constantly fight the system and that are up against the system. This Monday, make sure that you don't let any thoughts. And when you put a hashtag up, join on Monday. The stand solidarity with the family. Make sure that it is a fair process.
Danny, how you going? Good to see you, Danny.
I seem to recognise you.
Hi.
G'day.
How you going?
Need more water?
In a bit.
Hmm.
Tell us about your sign.
Well, I've seen a lot of flag waving these past couple of years, you know, pride flag, Ukrainian flag, Russian flag, Israeli flag, Palestinian flag. But only in this country, in my view, only one flag matters. And it matters that much more on Australia Day. Okay? I recognise that we have different backgrounds, different skin colours, and whatnot, but we all need to be united somehow under one flag. So, you know, we're so diverse, how do we have unity? One flag as far as I'm concerned. One flag. Other countries, you know, one flag for them, one flag for us.
The message of today's rally is one insistently of land rights, genocide and other issues that they feel deeply about. Do you think that flag could represent their concerns?
We can have a conversation. We've got NAIDOC Week, National Reconciliation Week, National Sorry Day, and I have no problems with those events. I wouldn't even turn up to protest against them. Because, you know, I'm happy to have those conversations. And if someone, rather than yelling through a megaphone in quite an aggressive way, basically stamping their feet on the position of Invasion Day, so, you know, they're not willing to give an inch and have a conversation, well, why would Australians listen? We saw the Voice referendum. The Yes campaign just rammed their campaign down people's throats that people were just so overwhelmed. The majority of Australians voted against it, not because they've got a problem with Aboriginal people. They've got a problem with getting divisive messages rammed down their throats.
The messaging you're talking about, well, it was kind of launched by the party in government, the Voice, if I could point that out. And the Labor Party got a lot of votes at the last election. In fact, the most votes. So I put to you that the views represented here, which may be a small number,
sure,
might be replicated by millions, or are reviewed and agreed with by millions. The Greens got more than 1 million votes, because the Greens got a lot of votes at the last election. So it may not be a niche, small issue. It might be something that's widely reflected. I've noticed that you haven't got a reaction from people yet, but you might later on.
I might.
You might. And
it's a nice park. No one likes to ruin a nice park.
It is a nice park. But what I was in the middle of putting to you was there's a lot of people who agree with what's being said here, even though they're not here. They agree with it, and rather than sort of divisive, I mean, multiculturalism, the direction we're going, we've got different community groups, and this is their community, and they don't necessarily agree with their flag. They want their own flag. They don't want to be unified. They want an area or a group of people that agree with their views.
In fact, I've just noticed, is that the Indian flag behind you?
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka. problem with so many freaking flags. Now, to address your question just then, very much true of Greens voters and other minor left-wing party voters, but a comment in general about the last election. Well, governments with a label Liberal, usually they don't get voted in, they get thrown out, because every now and then the Australian people get fed up with the current government, not necessarily because they like the federal opposition.
Yep.
There's been a few times throughout Australian history where there's so much enthusiasm for the opposition, so Kevin 07, Gough Whitlam's elections, 73 I think it was, or 72. To a less extent, Hawke's election in 83. But generally it's Australians throwing the government of the day out, not necessarily liking the opposition so much that they'll put them in government.
Now, are you here to represent a political party, a cause, a group, anything other than like you were a part of any? Is this part of a something more, or is this just your own individual speech?
It's individual. I'm an Australian, and I think I can say with some level of confidence that I'm representing what a lot of quiet Australians are thinking. Yeah, some quiet Australians, it's just a public holiday or an opportunity to get the barbie out. For others quiet Australians, a bit of that, and maybe some more, maybe some recognition of, well, yeah, we've done some bad things as a country, but we'd like to have our day as well.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure they would not object to NAIDOC, National Reconciliation Week. I don't think they'd have a problem.
And may I also add something?
Hold on, sorry. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi. Sorry, Dana, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Hi, my name's Alison Beveridge. I'm a journalist and also a bus driver. I write letters from Australia on Substack. But I just wanted to express my support for Aboriginal people, but also I think colonial history is being overly demonised now. And what you were saying before about the different communities, I think there's a concerted attempt now to break Australia down as a nation. And I think it's important that we respect our history. And yes, there were bad parts, and yes, there were frontier wars and battles and massacres. There are also wars on behalf of Aboriginal people and spearings and attacks on the first migrants. And I don't see why we can't respect both colonial history. I mean, they built the foundations, the legal foundations, the buildings, the court system, the parliamentary system. I don't see why we can't respect that history and also respect the history of Aboriginal people who have a long history of survival in a very inhospitable land, their own laws and customs, and their own valuable things to share. Like, why can't we celebrate everyone's history? I don't think it's insulting to Aboriginal people to keep Australia Day on this day.
Should the nation's National Day be celebrated on this particular day, though? Is it for certainly the people who are here and the ruling party that's in government that got the most votes? The view of their supporters, maybe not the party, but of many of their supporters, is this shouldn't be a day. And the speeches that we're hearing up there also reflect that. But can't your views that you just said there also be compatible with a different day?
No, I think it should remain as it is, and the reason for that is it's part of our history. And if you move the day, what you're saying is now we disrespect your history, we disrespect the history of the British colonists, because this day doesn't mark the day Australia was first landed on by Cook. It marks the day that the first colonists
Listening to what they're saying, that's exactly what they want, though. That is their cause.
Well, what I'm saying is that this day marks the first day that the first fleet arrived with the first boatload of migrants. So it's the first migrants, and they then built the first settlement here. And the Aboriginal people were then thrown into conflict over resources with that settlement. That started the frontier wars, and it's not the history, the history that's being presented here today is an overly pessimistic view. For example, they repeatedly say it's a genocide, it's a genocide. Yes, there were massacres. The Tasmanian Aboriginal people were practically wiped out. Yes, there were multiple killings and massacres all around New South Wales, but it's not the whole story. I've just been in the State Library. Governor Lachlan Macquarie issued an edict in 1816 saying, we will not, after multiple attacks on settlers, we will not allow people to be killing Aboriginal people, we will offer Aboriginal people land, clothes and tools if they choose to settle, and we will give them a place to live in our society if you give up the hunter-gatherer lifestyle, but you're not allowed within 1 kilometre of farms if you're armed, and that was because of the multiple attacks. Now you can say, well, it's their right to attack, they're being invaded, and you're right, but that's how history was. They didn't have the guns and weren't able to repel them, and now we've moved a long way forward from that. And it's also not the universal history of Aboriginal people. It was 1984 that the last of the Pintupi walked out of the Western Desert. They weren't massacred, they walked out of the Western Desert. 3 of them returned to the desert and didn't like modern society, but 6 of them stayed. So I think that the depiction of Aboriginal history is only taking the negative parts and exaggerating them, and discounting any of the positives that came from the British colonisation. And I think we need to accept the good and bad of both sides if we're to move forward.
Let me cross back to Dana. Dana. How do you bridge this gap? You've got a view which I think isn't going to be shared by many here, and vigorously opposed by most. How do you bridge the gap? Like, you're not going to be able to have a conversation with them face to face, but you can have a conversation maybe that they'll listen to here. What do you say to them again, they disagree with the date, These are things that aren't changeable. But what can you do to try and go ahead, negotiate.
Okay.
What's
all right, well, my first question is, if not January the 26th, which date and why? And it better be a good explanation.
I've listened to 3 speeches today which all say abolish the day. I've also listened to several speeches which say abolish Australia, but I'm putting that aside, just the date, just focusing on the date. Abolish the date, not move the date, abolish it is the message of today's event.
Not negotiable. If it's changed the date to a specific date, and here's the significance, keyword significance of why, I could be convinced. Now, I'll give you one example. I can't remember his name. I think his name's Joseph Adams or Adam Joseph, or one of those two.
John Adams?
Maybe. He's an Aboriginal activist based in Sydney, I believe. He wrote in the Sydney Morning Herald a few years ago, arguing that Australia Day should be, I think it's September the 23rd, 21st, I can't remember.
Go on.
The significance of that day is September, whatever the date was, 1791 was the day where, well, in the lead up to that particular date, Governor Phillip, I think it was at the time, in his infinite wisdom, decided to kidnap Bennelong's wife, Barangaroo, and another fellow tribesman. Phillip needed translators. It goes without saying, you don't go off and kidnap someone's wife, full stop. Anyway, he did that, so Bennelong's people retaliated. Phillip got speared, and then had a wake-up call, oh, I did a really bad thing, well, duh. So then he took the risk of travelling to what is today Manly with gifts to the local Aboriginal tribe with, look, we screwed up. We're sorry, here's the gifts. Now, yes, Kevin Rudd apologised for the Stolen Generation in 2008, but I would argue the first national apology was that date in September 1791.
Oh, it's an apology. Oh yeah, we messed up with bringing some gifts. Yeah, but replace the human life kind of thing. But that's an act of reconciliation. How can we talk about it? I get what you mean. Still, that isn't that commemorating a date that one group kidnapped another group's wife? And isn't that the beginning?
I didn't
of this
propose the date.
Oh, I know,
this activist has proposed it, and I read I think it was a Sydney Morning Herald. I read the article and I found it compelling. Now, if everyone here wanted to have that kind of sensible conversation, I might consider dropping this sign and start negotiating. And maybe we can settle on something that we can agree on in a consensus as a nation.
Abolishing Australia, non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable.
Abolishing a national day, non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable.
Well, but why? I mean, times change, things change. Okay, sorry, I just saw you. Yeah. All right, yeah, we'll just move on. Horse Patrol.
A lot of them.
It is.
Do I feel special? I'm not sure now.
Well, look.
Well, aren't they about to march anyway?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So and something I'm just going to highlight. either because they haven't seen it or haven't read the sign, but you've had, I wouldn't say a welcome, but you haven't been vigorously opposed as last year resulted in.
I'm getting the you stay where you are. Or maybe just stay where I am. I'm not going away.
Yes. But you haven't been vigorously opposed. And honestly, I enjoy this kind of conversation. But something I was saying to a traditional left supporter, what the left used to be like, Bob Brown, etc., was, as he described, the Gucci supporters here, the young, wealthy, white, highly educated, trending towards female, erratic, religiously zealotrous supporters here. I put to him, because he didn't quite like them, he was like, that you've got all this money, why are you coming to Socialist Alliance and all this kind of thing? It's just performative. You know nothing of what it's like. And I made the point to him that the discussions which turned to get exiled, because he actually quite likes me. He wants me at the Palestinian protests. Really? He wants me at the the BLM protests. And I'd like to be there, but I said, what you want me to, and I like covering long discussions, do not help that broad cause. They do tend to not help the broad Palestinian cause, because you have to keep your messaging simple. 3-word slogan, my friend. 3-word slogan.
I support Australia Day.
There you go.
Simple.
There you go.
Well, I support Indigenous rights, but I do not support the Palestinians taking over this protest. Palestinian Action Group was invited to this protest. Why, I don't know. But the biggest flag here is not an Aboriginal flag. It's a Palestinian flag. There's just a sea of Palestinian flags, which really annoys me. Is if we're going to have a discussion about Australia Day, a discussion about Indigenous rights, a discussion about the difficult points of our history, why the hell have we got bloody people trying to take it over from a conflict halfway around the world, which they're basically just trying to associate themselves with the Aboriginal people and try to take over that cause and try to masquerade as if they are them. It's disgusting.
That's it. No follow-up on that one. No follow-up on that one.
There's a cord that's hanging out from the back. I don't know if your thing is unplugged.
It's a little bit warm, so I don't always charge it when things get a little bit warm here. And temperature control matters, especially in heat like this. So I'll let it get down to lower temperature and then worry about battery later on. Otherwise, you start dropping frames.
Can I just say, as to what you just said about the protest actually turning people against a cause, that's another reason why I say it's so important that we have to respect both of our histories. Because if you're constantly denigrating the colonial history, constantly picking the worst parts about it...
Why is that a problem?
It's a problem because it turns away the help. It drives people apart from each other, and it turns away people who would actually want to help each other and support each other. There's a mountain of goodwill in ordinary Australia. Like, non-Aboriginal Australians want to help Aboriginal Australians. We've seen the disadvantage in the remote Aboriginal communities that everybody wants to help. But if you are constantly telling people...
They don't want help. They want land. They want the land back. And they want the date abolished, and they want the structures and systems.
Well, one would say what land? Because they're being given all the land back, like the land rights, Aboriginal land rights.
All of it.
Well, which land are you talking about?
All of it.
98% of the Northern Territory is in Aboriginal hands. Like, it's mostly all given back, and not just the land, the sea as well, the sea rights and the intertidal zone.
All of it. The cause here today, universally, I don't think you're going to find anyone here being like, 98%, 99%, 97%. I think if you speak to the people today, 100%, from sea to shining sea.
And then one has to ask, what do you mean by ownership? Do you mean traditional ownership? Do you mean communally owned in perpetuity, which has caused so many problems in Indigenous communities, because no one can start a bakery, no one can get a loan to start a business, an ecotourism business. They can't do it because the land is communally owned in perpetuity and managed by a land council. So you don't have any security of tenure.
Of the people who are here, these are problems to be dealt with after sovereignty is regained.
Well, I mean, what do they want? To kick out everybody else? Well, in that case, if you want to pursue that logic, well...
Decolonisation.
Well, if you want to decolonise, what about the buildings and the structures, the legal structures that were built by the colonists? Do you then burn them to the ground as well? You can have the land back as it was.
Speaker after speaker today, legal structures gone, parliament gone, the systems and governmental institutions, everything you're talking, including flags, will be entirely replaced.
And what are they suggesting they replace
community-run organisations of their decisions, along the lines of pay the rent, which are not for you or people of other types to question.
Well, sounds like a communist revolution, doesn't it? Which would explain why the communists are here in force. I've seen their flags here as well. And there's the Socialist Alliance,
Socialist
and the Communist Party of Australia. The Greens are very communist allies. and the Palestinians are a communist invention. As some people at least know, Yasser Arafat in 1964 invented the whole ethnicity of Palestinian. They're actually just Arab Muslims who lived across the Ottoman Caliphate. But the KGB assisted Yasser Arafat in 1964 to invent the whole Palestinian ethnicity, to create a small tiny ethnicity to fight against the Goliath of Israel, because before then it looked like small tiny Israel against the Goliath of surrounding Arab Muslim nations against them. So it's an invention. And that Palestinian flag they wave, that was taken from the flag of the Arab Revolt. It's also the Syrian Ba'ath Party flag. That flag they're waving doesn't belong to an ethnicity that's been there for centuries, like they're claiming. It's not. It's got nothing to do with Aboriginal people.
Can you summarise that in a 3-word chant?
3 sentences.
It's you're not Indigenous, Palestinians, that's not an ethnicity. The Arab Muslims from the Ottoman Caliphate area, no different to the ones in Iraq, no different to the ones in Jordan, no different to the ones in neighbouring Egypt. I mean, they're all one people. They were all living in Ottoman lands. Just like there were Jews living around the Ottoman lands at that time in Iraq, in Syria, in Jordan. So when Israel was created, it wasn't just Europeans coming across, it was for the other ones in the other places, like the 125,000 in Iraq. These people don't know anything about history. They don't know their history.
Can I steer these things back to Australia Day?
Yes.
And maybe you've got a point that we're spending so much time talking about Palestine and why they're Palestinian flag.
Well, that's because they've overrun it. And they're communists.
Linked causes, right? Maybe there's some linked causes of, but back to Australia. Okay, let's come back to Australia Day. I think we're about to march in a little bit.
Oh, and whilst you two were talking, I noticed a police officer passing both of you, and she didn't seem to care. So maybe they don't care today. Who knows?
So if I was in the operations centre right now, I'd do nothing. I'd do nothing. We got how many CCTVs from here? You just look at it. Police. To create something out of nothing that's happening right now, just you're draining resources and you're drawing attention to what if you were public order and riot right now, you hope just nothing happens. Because that's a successful public order and riot operation, is nothing. Literally nothing happens. What did you do today? Nothing. Hey! Cheers all around. You want no dramas, no one hurt, no deployments. If you're on the front line and you're a bit of a belter, yeah, maybe you want something to happen, right? but if you're in the operations center, you want nah. What happened today, Minister? Oh, nothing. So that's probably going to be the hope, is absolutely nothing happens, and plausibly, nothing's going to happen. That said, 7 News might be about. He's been looking for you. I actually thought, because he was sitting over on the steps where you were last year, and I thought you'd given him a tip off, and I was like, what? Oh, okay, because he was sitting right there, so maybe he was there just hoping that something happened again. I don't know, but he was sitting right over there.
I'm quite popular for mainstream media.
If he comes over, I don't know, he may or may not come over, but he's probably just going to walk with the march. And they're going north, so I don't think they're actually going to be coming your way here.
Hence the horses behind us.
Yeah, which is fine, but which actually, back to the content I appreciate, but it doesn't go anywhere near as viral. It really is about a 300-to-1 ratio of screaming, shouting, violence versus, what do you think? Like, what do you think is like 300 views? Screaming, shouting, violence, 300,000! It's just...
It's too hot for much screaming today, I think.
Yeah, what do you think is like in the Middle East? Well, Yasser Arafat, Arabic is not the language of peace.
Well, Arabic is the language of Arabia. They're not native to that land either, so they can stop pretending they're Aboriginal people. They're not.
Well, English isn't particularly native. It's only been 200
It's not a native language. Aboriginal first Australians speak Australian languages. All over the Northern Territory, there's plenty of people who still speak Australian languages as their first language. English is a foreign language, but it is our lingua franca.
Let's come back to the date, because so much is about the date, change the date. So you support the existing date, but down at the existing date is when the beginning of millions of European migrants arrived in this country. Right? British migrants arrived in this country.
The day of migration, first migration.
And in fact, really, so many of us are migrants, but the people here came 1,000 years earlier, right? So I put to you, maybe is there some reverence that needs to be given on how long you've been here or your ethnicity has been here?
couple of points. Everyone in this country is a migrant, in the sense of, I think is it 60 or 65,000 years ago that Aboriginal Australians migrated to Australia. And then yes, you know, in the last couple hundred years, it's been everyone else from across the world. The first fleet, they were not 100% Anglo-Celtic. If I remember correctly, there was one or two Jews, a couple of Jamaicans.
I'm just going to slide around this way so I've got the background around it, but please carry on.
Like, they weren't all 100% Anglo-Celtic, the first fleet. And most of them were deported to Australia, what we now call Australia, against their will. The British concept of land ownership, I acknowledge that it's different to the Aboriginal concept of land ownership, and both sides didn't understand each other with regards to that. So there were misunderstandings, and look, there were even more misunderstandings as time went by. You had conflict between settlers and Aboriginal people, resulting in Aboriginal people being killed. I acknowledge all that. Shouldn't have happened. If I could try to speak on behalf of the settlers, they should have done better. Now, and you could argue, it could be,
to what standard? What are we comparing to?
Well, clearly I'm comparing it to a 24, I should say, standard.
Can I compare it to 1788?
Oh, that's a different standard. And
Pre-Napoleon. Wait, was the French Revolution? No, French Revolution. But, you know...
10 years later, I think.
Ancient regime France, Viceroyalty of New Spain, Ming Qing, China, right?
Right,
by those standards. I know I'm kind of agreeing with you in this question, but compared to those, like...
Look, obviously different standards. But what we can do now is reflect back on it and say, yep, as we've always said, shouldn't have happened. That was a massive screw up. People were killed. Lives were ruined. But in calling today Invasion Day is not helping with reconciliation.
Can I give you a question from Caitlin? Who's it going to hurt to change it to the 27th? One day, right?
Well, it's interesting Caitlin's brought it up, because I've heard of an argument. Well, it's a bit of a distraction argument. Well, why don't you just make Australia Day either the last Monday or the last Friday of January, so that everyone gets their public holiday, and this is to be inclusive of those who don't really care about Australia Day per se, they just want public holiday, and it diffuses the situation. I'm kind of, well, if that's what she's kind of trying to argue, I'm kind of open to that, because, you know, you're negotiating. But do these guys agree on a particular date that makes sense? And I dare say the answer is no.
The most consistent, most broad-based message that I've heard here is abolishing the day.
And that is not negotiable for me.
Okay. Okay. But at the same time, we've got to also think about groups of people. Liberal Party broadly wants to keep it the same. One Nation, kind of right-wing parties want to keep it the same. On the left, Labor vaguely kind of dogwism. They're internally divided, but you know, there's a movement that way. Greens definitely. I don't know if they want to abolish or change, but I think it's abolished.
Again, like I said earlier, we've got NATO Week, all these other weeks and days. No one's protesting them, nor is there a real reason to. And they do their thing. I believe NAIDOC is the week of recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture. That's fine. I think it's the 1st of July. Now, if someone made the argument, they should change that because, I don't know, feelings. Well, similarly, I would argue, okay, well, that's your thing. Don't just, I don't know, change to make me feel better. Like, that is your thing. Like, I'm happy to just leave you guys alone on that front. Same with National Reconciliation Week.
Speaking of being left alone, you're being left alone, so I'm going to interrupt you guys. Can I get a photo?
Yeah.
Could you stand up for us? Give me 1 second. Go 70, chest flash. Yep, we should be able to. You don't need to go too fast.
Where am I standing?
Yeah, just there. That's fine. Wait 1 sec. Yep, that's great. Here we go. Here we've got an officer in the background. Don't know if you want the officer or not. I got the officer or not. Flash is a bit intense, but on these hazy days like this, it's just really intense kind of lighting conditions. It's a bit ick. A bit ick. Okay. Cool.
No, I just think it's a very significant day because it is the day of the first landing of the first settlers. So it's the first real meeting of colonists setting up a colony and Indigenous people, some of whom resisted the colony and some of whom joined it. So it was the real meeting of two peoples, the meeting of two peoples that was the genesis and the start of the modern nation that we have now.
So the beginning of multiculturalism, was this?
As I said, on that first fleet, not every single person on that first fleet were Anglo-Celtic.
Were which?
The first fleet, not everyone on board the first fleet were Anglo-Celtic.
Yes.
Like there were a couple of Jews and Jamaicans, for example.
Yes.
So that's, I don't know, that's multicultural, I think.
And people forget that it was very tough for those early colonists as well to hack out a town, to hack out crops, to grow crops, to just do things. And I've been through the State Library looking up the old history. They were actually in some ways more tough on their own colonists than they were, because they were keen in the first 20, 30 years to make friends with the Aboriginal people. They were told they're not allowed to kill the Aboriginal people. That was the directive. It wasn't directed to them, go and kill all the Aboriginal people, you'll be fine. That's not what happened. They were directed to make peace and make friends if you can. And so, for example, there's a story in the State Archives of two men who stole from the King's stores. Now, they were colonists and they were hung for it. But Aboriginal raiding parties would steal and sometimes spear settlers, and they weren't killed in return because they were trying to make friends and they were trying to cross that cultural barrier for a long time. So I think that we're only remembering the bad of one side and only remembering the good of another side. We have to remember the bad and good of our history and just remember and respect our history as a whole.
If I can advocate for their point of view, in order to achieve political goals, there's no room for nuance. Keep it simple, aim for what you're looking for. The details that you're speaking about clutter what is an attention deficit within the voting public. There's no room to discuss this philosophy which it comes across as. It's only for academics, and by and large, when it comes to academia, there's a consistent theme amongst it. So, yes, the audience for this will appreciate it, but only academics can appreciate what you're going into, the history that you're saying.
It has real world consequences though, because if you completely denigrate the British colonial history, you will make large numbers of Australian people for whom that is their history too. You will turn them against it. You will make them hate the whole movement, nothing to do with helping Aboriginal people, start viewing them as complainers and people that we've already given so much, why should we give any more? Like, I don't think we need that kind of division. I think we just need to come together and try to help each other.
It depends if it achieves your political goals or not.
Well,
if it achieves your political goals, it's a small price to pay to get to where you're going.
The goal of tearing down our nation and breaking it apart, that is the aim of some people and some of the people here. They do want to do that.
That is part of the goal is in order to achieve that. Again, decolonisation is not a gentle term. Take, for example, after October 7th, Israel-Palestine. Decolonisation, what was it? Never said it was going to be pretty, never said it was going to be easy, never said it was going to be bloodless. These are the chants and things saying of what they were going to mean. This lady may want to have a conversation. Say, oh no, she's just passing through.
So are you saying that's what they use, the Arab Muslims of Gaza used to justify the rape and murder rampage of October 7th, but they said that that's decolonisation? That's not decolonisation, that was a rape and murder rampage.
Much of it is justified resistance that has been going on forever, is what the words that have been said at so many protests.
Well, they're deluding themselves, because dragging a rape victim through the streets of Gaza with people running out of every doorway to beat them with sticks and spit on them, like 20-year-old women who've been raped and shot and killed in the worst possible way. That's not resistance. That's not an army fighting another army. That's not even a armed militant fighting back against some soldiers. That's nothing to do with that. That's an orgy of sadism designed to provoke a response so that they could do what they're doing now, which is to go around the world saying Israel are terrible genocidal maniacs. Look at how they're bombing Gaza now. If they want that war to end, Hamas should surrender. Surrender right now. War ends tomorrow. But they won't do that.
I don't think they want the war to end. I think they want a victory.
Yeah, they want to get everybody else to fight their war for them against Israel and dismantle Israel and have a real genocide, as in the complete displacement and murder of every Israeli Jew, and replace it with an Islamic State. That's what they say they want.
A significant displacement has actually happened of millions of Gazans has actually happened rather than a theoretical one. And what happens next is the question what's being raised.
It's a tale of two genocides. You've got two implacable sides. You've either got a genocide if you give this side what they want, or you've got a genocide if you give that side what they want. So what do you do? It's a zero-sum game there, isn't it?
Everybody take a bite. Can I bring it back to more closer shores and more closer issues? Like the date, which is going on, and the discussion going around and around. People are looking, but they're not coming closer. They're not coming closer. They may not fully understand this, and this can come up often. Is that your signs?
I mean, I understand that Alison's been historically academic here, but it's summed up in a sign: respect our history, colonial and Aboriginal, I should say. It is our nation. I mean, if you want a non-academic answer, it's right here in the sign. As for me, yes, I've gone for something more simple, but like you said, message needs to be simple, and if someone wants to come up to me and have a conversation about which date, I'd be open to it.
I'm not sure conversations will necessarily happen about today. Shouting, mate. But so far so good.
Not bad.
Let me come back to the points that what's been said on stage a little bit more. Abolish the date, non-negotiable, got it. Changing the date to open to other dates, one of which was Barangaroo's wife, was it?
When Philip tried to apologise to the local Aboriginal tribe for kidnapping Barangaroo's wife.
Yep. Did she?
No. Bennelong's wife, who is Barangaroo. Sorry.
Bennelong's wife. Oh, Bennelong's wife is Barangaroo.
I misgendered Barangaroo. I'm so sorry.
We'll see how that pans out. I think there's a review committee which will assess that, and not me. I think other people will assess whether correct pronouns are assessed. A growing industry, and we need economic growth. So the DEI industry in the US is one of the fastest growing industries in America, in by and large the world. And are you against jobs? You against jobs? I didn't think so. So you support DEI, right?
It's a clever way of arguing in non-good faith.
Well, Keynes said it might be during the Depression. Keynes. Maynard Keynes.
Oh, yeah.
Said endorsed a policy to go and bury wine bottles full of cash all over the British Isles to stimulate some kind of economic activity, because 20% of Britain was unemployed. Pointless economic activity, but at least someone's doing something rather than sitting at home hungry.
Keynesian argument.
Yes.
Very interesting.
Well, why can't they do something useful instead of doing something silly? Why can't they dig the tunnel under the mountains so that the sewer can go under the mountains out west and be dumped in an old mine shaft instead of pumped into the ocean?
They're academic graduates. They can't do that.
They can't do it.
They're not qualified.
No. Can't do useful things.
No. They're able to write policy documents.
Yep.
They're able to lobby for change. I'm sorry, but the digging is the hammer, the sickle is. While they'll hold the flag, they're not capable of the tools of. Back to the date, sorry, Dana.
Adam Smith is crying.
Look, wait, they're not marching. Hold on, they're not marching.
That lady's actually stuck in Aboriginal so they're now one flag. This is what I object to. So I apologise for picking on bringing up the Palestinian thing, but how can I avoid it? Look, it's right in front of you. She's stuck the two flags together. They're trying to take over that cause and pretend that they're the Aboriginals of the Middle East. They're Aboriginals of Israel. It's not true. The analogy would be if there were two tribes of Aboriginal people in Israel, the Jews and the Aboriginals, who were both there after World War I, both there for thousands of years. But they're trying to pretend they're the only ones.
More than half of this conversation so far, and I'd say just as much over there, has been about the Israeli-Palestine conflict. What do you make of that?
So, admittedly, ever since the conflict started, I think it was October 7th, I've not been to one pro-Palestine or pro-Israel protest here in Sydney.
Okay.
The reason being is, look, I've read the Bible. This conflict in the Middle East, or just conflict in the Middle East in general, it goes back to biblical times. Now, I understand that currently in Gaza and West Bank, new nuances. It's not the same biblical story, but and even if I look at the nuances in the Middle East right now, it's so complicated. I can't understand myself to figure out, well, how much is the Israelis at fault, how much of the Palestinians or I should say the Palestinian Authority is at fault, not the Palestinian people. And I see fault on both sides, and I'm like, do I really want to turn up to any of these protests? Because I think the issues are much more complicated. I don't really have a position, or a clear position, I should say, on the Israel-Palestine conflict. Because,
More
as
so
I said...
rather than your position, if I can reframe it to you, I certainly find it remarkable that whenever we're lately, over the past 20 weeks, been speaking about Aboriginal land rights, native, anything about that, the conversation swings straight to Palestine, straight to Israel, straight to the Jews, straight to the Arabs, straight to the Muslims, straight to... Why? And is this hijacking, or is this a natural linking of two shared fates, shared causes, shared purposes?
So left activists will argue what you've just said, share common goals, shared causes, but it's so obvious that they're linking up to bolster their relevance. This is how they're bolstering relevance. If they were both relevant to the quiet Australians, both causes, they wouldn't combine. They just keep their causes separate. You protest on that day, we'll protest on this day, or we'll protest on the other side of the city, and cause some noises at both ends and be more effective that way. But no, they've combined themselves. So
isn't that unity, pooling your resources, something that the freedom movement failed to do? Is they held competing protests at the same date, same time, just across the other field. Can't they link arms? And isn't that...
Look, I'll give him credit for being strategic in that sense. It's not a dumb move on my part.
But is it ideologically consistent?
I don't believe so. Smart, but not ideologically consistent.
Isn't it consistent enough? I mean, sometimes odd alliances come up just to get over the finish line, and then the alliance will break apart once you've achieved your goal. In this case, queers for Palestine.
Yeah, I see their logic. I don't agree with that logic. Look, obviously, I live in a different world to them. They live in a different world to me.
Do you feel the average or most Palestinians would respect your right to exist?
That's a very good question. Let's see. So, parents were Vietnamese migrants, trans and conservative-ish. I think they'd rather I wouldn't exist, to be honest. I'm not saying all of them. I'm sure some of them would be like, oh, that person over there is very interesting. But I think some of them just wouldn't want me to be here. Just if I could be wiped off the face of the planet, why not? It's convenience, right?
I'm now going to give you the other side as someone who's held a sign outside of CPAC saying, I'm transgender and I'm conservative. At the most recent American CPAC, some of the strongest, widely written about, anti-trans language at CPAC was said at CPAC by Michael Knowles that transgenderism must cease to exist in
something
the public
like
space.
That. Yeah, I recall
as
that.
In the public sector, in the public space.
Yeah, you can tell I'm not a big fan of Michael Knowles. I know the speech you're referring to.
So I'm giving you two ends of a stick here. Which one is?
I think principles must be defended, and if I shared those principles with, or supposedly share those principles with someone who would use the kind of words that Michael Knowles used, I wouldn't be friends with him. I'd still turn up to CPAC and be like, I exist. I don't need to shout through a microphone because, like, let's say this is a CPAC conference. I'm right here. If I don't exist, just kill me. But they're not going to do that. They're too chicken.
It was in the public space. So Michael Knowles was explicitly talking about as a...
I would have loved to be in that crowd and be like, hey, Michael, like, where's your gun? Like, like, no, if he was principled, that's what he would do, right? Transgenderism should cease to exist was something
in the public arena.
Yeah, but people can't just live strictly public lives like it's locked down. No one can live like that. Everyone's got to have a private and public life.
We're doing a terrible job of talking about Australia Day.
Who?
I'm sorry, I'm not helping this either.
Well, it's kind of...
We're today about is
well,
Australia Day.
yeah.
We're supposed to be talking about
It's kind of
transgenderism. We're talking about Palestine. We're talking about Israel.
Yeah, but it's kind of their fault for going off topic. Like it's fault all round, really.
Let's go back to Australia. Alison, bring us back to Australia Day.
Well, I don't know. What would you like to know?
Anything. I'm trying to reframe this because at the moment there's so many linked, forked issues that I actually think it becomes the topic that we can't talk about Australia Day without talking about other countries, without talking about sexuality, without anything else, because it's all connected.
Well, I think the reason why I want to actually, I mean, I've been to plenty of Aboriginal Invasion Day protests before, sometimes on Australia Day, and also just general Australia Day celebrations. And the reason why I would think to actually make this sign and sit here and support Dana today is because I think things have changed now, in that there's an actual attempt to tear apart our nation. And by nation, I mean a group of people that has a unified sense of itself. So even though we have lots of migrants from all around the world, we had at least, say, as late as 1986, a unified sense of ourselves. So in 1986, under the Hawke government, we had the push to bring in the Australia card, which was an ID card. And
that was a great plan.
Yeah.
The Albury chip got a lot of work out of that one.
People from all walks of life all banded together and said, no, we don't want that, it's Orwellian, get lost, we're not having it. We don't care about welfare chiefs, we want our freedom. And people were unified enough as a nation to do that.
That was the best part of a half century ago.
Yes, and now, but in those intervening 50 odd years, what's happened is that there's been a slow and gradual drip of trying to tear apart our nation, our unified thing. So now we're not a nation anymore, we're just separate communities. So you have your Aboriginal community, you have this community, that community, that community. And I think this is now becoming predated on by the world globalist influence, which there are groups of people basically who want to tear down the power of the nation. They don't want to have to let us make our own decisions about our own laws and be unified.
I'm alright.
So that's
So what you is the melting pot? The melting pot was a hope of the 1970s and 80s, and we never got there. For some we did, but you can only melt.
I got fair.
Yes.
I got fair.
When did your parents arrive?
1980s. Like, for them to choose not to at least attempt to integrate would have been inexcusable. Because they recognise that. And
times have changed. Times have changed. We're talking about almost 1 million people have arrived in the last 360 days alone. Like this,
which goes back to my point earlier.
That's not going to happen.
We're many backgrounds, but how do we unify? I'd say one flag.
The stock exchange. The stock exchange. The old money dollar. That's going to be our flag. It's universal. No?
Non-negotiable.
Mercantilism is not, we can't unify around that. The one thing that we all share is a common commercial interest.
As long as it's not at the expense of the national Australian flag. Australian national flag, I should say. Yeah.
The most important thing in the stock market is market stability. And for stability to exist, groups like these, for these to get out of hand, whether
are they marching in our direction?
Oh, well,
the horses are just...
Time now. No. Shared history and time makes a nation. Shared history and time. So we need just time and slightly slow.
I'm not sure they're authorised to do that.
Interesting.
Or maybe they are. Maybe I'm wrong. Oh, maybe they are. Maybe it's a march. Maybe they are marching after all.
Right,
I thought it was north, but I'm going to stand up and just get on my feet because I might not actually. I'll just stay low. Yeah, I'll stay low. Low's good. Stay lay low. Is this laying low?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Let's lay low.
We're vulnerable.
Are we? Okay, we're vulnerable. Well, they are in charge today. They have the power.
We're vulnerable to the point that if they decide to pick on us, it's not a great look, is it?
And if we're going to talk about decolonisation, by the way, why do we never talk about the decolonisation of West Papua, which was only invaded in 1964, brutal occupation still ongoing, right on our northern doorstep? Why are we talking about decolonisation of the Middle East, like thousands of kilometres away? Like, why is that attached to the Aboriginal flag? Why not the West Papuan flag? That's at least related. Sorry to interject you that.
Can I give a chase?
Well, I don't think anyone cares about us, so go on.
They're more worried about the unauthorised protest.
Yeah, go.
Can I? Is it okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
go.
okay. Alright, I'm gonna go and see what happens over here.
Should be going that way, and then that way. So I'm trying to turn.
Can we meet them on the corner? You're gonna have to wait. That's fine, we'll just go back to the corner.
Bikes! Friendly! Hayden! Follow these guys. Just stop them from commencing before.
Let's go. Loading that one. Homeless white. Actually, a few homeless white guys along here. So what happens here? They want to march, but they're told that they can't. Park, but I think they closed it down anyway.
Line it out on the road, move it out on the road. Walk up front, Sissy.
So what's just happened here is I think this is not the authorised protest part. And they've kind of jumped ahead.
Oh, get it! Jump on all board!
See you next one. Chris, how are you? Yeah, mate. No trouble today?
Better jump on after
Everyone's trying to work out how to get these groups to link up because you've got a group down there. Bit of a moment, but no, they're just a couple of groups trying to reform it, and they were able to form a new line here before they let them merge together. cars at the front here.
You right? Did you want to go in the middle? Then we missed the protest. Can we just go right to that island? We can't. There's no one there. We just go right where that is. Okay.
They won't see it, just that was alright. I didn't mind that chat last time. It was alright. It was a bit of an intense moment, but you know who I am now. Before you didn't.
But I didn't. It's hard to shoot when I'm talking. Like to talk when I'm working.
They got an assistant.
No. She's the shoot. They're all my team. But I was like, what's this guy doing? And then every time I turn, you get the camera. It's alright.
It's at night, and the light makes it intense.
I know.
But nice to see you again. Nice to see you. I'll see you again next protest.
Okay, see you, mate.
Stay cool.
Where's Dana and the gang?
Just up there. I'm going to go back to them. She's got a sign saying, I support Australia Day.
One of your... Who's the other guy? Clinton? Clinton me? No, he's always with her. He was with her.
Clinton, just the monarchy one. Yeah. I gotta go. You go. Go. Bye. All right, let's go back to Dana.
Are you filming, Champ?
I am.
Live streaming.
I'm just wondering. I'm just curious because again, it's not just. I just want to understand.
What I want to say as well is that I think there's been a revision of history that's becoming now to be too toxic. Like, I acknowledge all the terrible massacres that have happened, but also I think we are forgetting to acknowledge that there was actually good done as well by the colonists that settled. And we were lucky in one respect, that we got colonists from Britain in the historical period of the Age of Enlightenment there, when they had a philosophy, an system which said that at least they had ideals for, they didn't live up to it all the time, but at least they had the ideal of. We still haven't, but it at least had some ideals which other cultures in history haven't had.
So would your argument be that because it used to be worse than that, this is okay?
No, my argument is that we're forgetting sometimes some of the good things that they did. So, for example, not all Aboriginal people were genocided.
Unfortunately, if this is...
If I'm not just finished, not all Aboriginal people were genocided. There were wars and frontier wars when the invaders and /settlers came here and settled their colony. But they didn't kill every Aboriginal person that they came across. That wasn't what the wars were at the time. At the time they were sent out, they were told deliberately not to kill Aboriginal people. Try to make friends with them.
What do you think, mate? Tell us, what do you think?
Yeah, well, I've been listening to this from the beginning. I think your general points are that. Sorry, can you see me? Yeah, cool. Can you just bring your hat up a little bit more so I know who I'm talking to?
Looking in your eyes.
Yeah. It sounds like most of your points are, well, a lot of European people had all these cool ideas of inventions and philosophies and ideas, but unfortunately it comes across as believing that is inherently superior to people who lived with next to no impact on the land they lived in. Please. Well, do you believe that the colonizers have, or whatever you'd like to call them, do you believe the British convicts, settlers, whatever, I don't care who you want to call them, the white folk that came to Australia back in 1788 and before then and after then, do you think that you're saying their culture as like a net positive to
You're putting a moral valence on it, which I never did.
Okay.
I never said one was better than the other. They're just different systems. The colonizers came with a different technology, different philosophy, different system of thought, different systems of everything. And Aboriginal people had their own different systems and different between tribes. So you have the meeting of two cultures. One was more technologically advanced.
Okay, my turn. So do we still have those two systems? And if that's true, to what extent does Australia live under the other system that existed 250 years ago? So my argument would be that we don't live under Indigenous Australian systems. We live under a system near parallel to how the UK lives. We still have a queen, or now it's a king. Like that we don't have the two systems working in conjunction with another. They are not compatible, unfortunately.
And you're right, they aren't compatible because one system was a survivalist system for people who were living a hunter-gatherer lifestyle at the time. And so a lot of the reasons for a lot of the laws within that system were taken away by technological advancements. So for example, in the Northern Territory, when the last Pintupi walked out of the desert in 1984, they had never seen glass before. They had never seen water from a running tap. And they were angry with their cousins for not telling them about basically the easy life that there was. And in time, free of the Pintupi line, they walked back into the desert. They didn't like this lifestyle. They said, no, this is actually making us sick. This is not right. We want to live our traditional way.
So is that better?
And some of them stayed. Now, I'm not making better or worse judgments. That's you.
But it sounds like, but you are though. But
no,
you are.
You are that's your choice.
No, you are speaking about it very in a very positive light, and it's very hard to. I still can't see you.
She doesn't need to.
Tell us your thought.
I've not added any moral valence to that at all. I'm simply describing
you did though.
the two different systems.
But you did.
You are putting the moral valence
can I
on
please
technology
speak?
versus technology. So you are the one trying to push that.
Whoever is watching this, you are free to listen to this interview, and you can count the words that I've said and the time that I've been speaking.
But what's the goal for today, ladies?
Well, I simply want to express myself and say I think that we need to have a bit more healing, and I think that we need to not change the day, because I think we need to acknowledge this day for its goods and its bads. And I think we've become too toxic towards the British colonial invaders and settlers.
Who's
I
we?
think they did good things as well as bad, and I think we need to acknowledge that, and also acknowledge that it was also tough for them.
But who is we need to acknowledge the goods and bads? We still live under a colonialist system.
Do you think
White is the
what type of
standard in
acknowledgement would
Australia.
you
Like I get profiled by cops all the time, and I've got like a fucking clean slate record, right? I get pulled over randomly. I am
randomly selected every time you fly.
Parents do double takes with me if I'm around their children. Like it's. No, I just said I'm clean. I have no record. I have no, like I why is the conversation here? Why can't you believe me? Well, I think that it's quite telling. Now we're going to do a different point than the one I wanted to do.
Good luck to you. I want to go to the march.
Now we're going to do a different point than the one that I wanted to do, because the very fact that you have kind of assumed that maybe even though I said never committed a crime, you're saying, well, are you sure you haven't committed a crime? Would you ask that to someone who's...
Why are you being pulled over? Why are they targeting you? That's what I'm asking.
For a random breath test. For a random drug test. Because I look different. And this is something that perhaps you haven't understood.
You look like everybody else I see all day long. We all look different. Dana looks different. You look different. I look different. You don't look
Unfortunately, the percentages of white folk compared to people of colour is a very different story.
I don't think that's true at all in Sydney.
Would you like some stats to? Oh, Sydney. Okay, so if I leave Sydney, then
you're not the only one that gets pulled over. I asked you if you had a cops database because that's been my experience. I've been pulled over before in question because I had hostile stuff put on my cops database record by a person who had malignant intent. That's why I asked. So how dare you assume that I must be asking that because I'm some type of proto-racist that doesn't recognise that you're being victimised for your skin colour?
Why did you?
Because it's happening to me too. And
why
it's
did?
happened to me.
But why are we talking about whether I've
I've
committed crimes? Why are we talking?
There you go.
Why are we talking about
that?
that?
You've built your own mind cage, and that's the cage and lens through which you're viewing the world, and it's not actually reality. You've put all these assumptions on me, but I reject those assumptions.
Maybe one day you'll have a friend who tells you, maybe similar skin color to me, that women.
My best friend's Sri Lankan, and he's black as the ace of spades. And by the way, he's gay. And by the way, he spent 10 years
Can I
working
interrupt
in
both
Saudi Arabia.
and point to Dana?
Yeah.
Dana, are you? What? How do you describe your skin color? How would you describe? This is Dana, by the way.
Brown.
Okay.
You know, people
Fair
joke
assessment.
about terrorists, like that I'm a terrorist. Women say that they'd cross the street if I was walking behind them at night, and that could just... No, it's not rubbish, and this is the... What would it take to prove this to you? You've already decided. See, this tells me that this discussion isn't productive anymore. Is you've already decided like a certain reality that I exist in, and you think I'm just making these up for clout. That I've got something to prove to saying this to people who I don't know in front of a camera, who I don't know who's operated by. I don't really understand like why what would I have to gain by lying about that?
God, no, you tell me. Maybe it's just...
No, you're the one accusing me of lying.
I didn't hear you say that.
No, but you said rubbish. That's pretty...
Right, I said rubbish. That's just...
What does that mean then? Oh my God. This is such bad faith, guys.
Because all my whole lived experience, you know, I spent how many years just... All my friends are mostly people of colour. That never happens to them. Never.
How do they feel about your idea that Australia Day should be celebrated in the good and the bad?
Well, my best friend Rashan totally supports it. And
No.
Australia,
What about your other friends?
They support it.
Really? They just support it. Why aren't
We
they
can't
here
be
with
living
you?
our lives
Are they
satisfying
here
all
with
of our
you?
friends.
No, that's true.
We'll
but-
have friends who agree and disagree, and that's just life.
Yes, I agree that's life, but why don't you want to talk about the friends that disagree with you? So,
Why don't you tell me about your friends that weren't pulled over by the police?
I mean, I can, but that's not really relevant to what we're talking about right now.
Well, neither
But this is though, because when you bring up your friends, I've got a black gay Sri Lankan friend, and all your friends are people of color.
Who spent 10 years working in
Okay,
Saudi Arabia,
I'm not talking.
I might add.
I'm not.
And
Yeah,
do you
well, I'm
know
against
what
Saudi
happened in
Arabia, to be honest. Yeah, a
Do you
lot
know
of
what
bad
happened?
things.
They're not just radical Islamists who execute gay people by chopping off their heads and stoning adulterers.
Yeah,
to death.
there's a lot of
That's
bad
not
things
all they do.
happening.
They're also massive racists who
Yeah,
hate
I know.
black people.
I'm
And
against
because
ethno-states.
He is black, he
We're in
would
agreement
walk
here.
down the street in Saudi Arabia and people would throw fruit at
We're in
him from
we're in
passing
agreement
cars.
here. I have a Palestinian yarmulke. I come from descendants of Holocaust survivors. My mum is for Israel. My grandparents who survived the Holocaust were against Israel, believe it or not. My entire family is for Israel. My brother and I are the only ones in the family who say, this is fucked up, we shouldn't have ethno-states. So I promise, you and I are in agreement there. Ethno-states, bad, very bad, right?
I don't think an ethno-state is necessarily bad. Japan's an ethno-state. I don't think Japan is bad. Japan is fine. What's wrong with Japan? What's wrong with South Korea? That's an
What if I wanted to go live in Japan? What
You
happened?
wouldn't really be able to.
Why not?
You would find it very, very tough.
Why?
Because you wouldn't be able to buy a house.
Yeah.
Japanese companies do that to you.
Why
It's
not?
very difficult for you to migrate. They don't allow migration.
Why not?
They're very hostile to it.
Why not?
They'd be
Because it's an
hostile for
ethno.
me, and
Yeah.
I'm Asian.
Because
Yeah,
it's an
okay.
ethno-state.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to do it.
But what if you really wanted to live in Japan? Like, what if you had like a factory that creates
Well,
special saxophones or
one of
something,
my friends
and and you really want to work there?
My friends, he'd want
What if
to.
you're PewDiePie?
He taught English there. He taught
PewDiePie
English there
He's
for
weird.
2-3
He's rich
years
and he's
he
white,
couldn't
so.
live there.
He still found it hard. He still found it. He took
And
years.
even he found it hard, right? Gotcha.
Where was his white privilege? It didn't apply in Japan. Ethno-state. Yeah.
What? But he's an exception that proves
No.
the rule, right? Because as you said, so hang on, are we arguing that it's easy or is that's not easy?
I'm just saying.
He's extremely wealthy, right?
He
so
is,
that helps.
but he still found it. He still found it difficult. It took him years to apply. Had to reapply.
Gotcha. So, do you think that people should have that experience? Why just Japan? Why have immigration at all? Why let white people into Australia? Like, why not have only the people who are native from those countries exist as the sole people from those countries? Why should Japan be any different?
Well, you're
Why draw the line
reductio
there?
ad absurdum just because there's one example. Now you're saying why shouldn't everyone be exactly like that? Well, that's an absurd, reducing it to absurdity.
But I'm saying, why is Japan?
Can we cross to Dana? Dana, what do you think?
I'll be frank and say, I'm not leaving Australia. I'm not deporting myself. Anyone here interested in deporting themselves if they don't have Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander background? Anyone? Because if we believe, where are we heading? Like in terms of this debate, like is it more than just pay for rent? Because if it is, then we have to start asking questions of who should remain in Australia and who should be deported. And my position is I'm not deporting myself. Now, I was born in Australia, but my parents clearly, came to Australia after Vietnam War.
Can I cross that? Does more immigration, the numbers like we've seen over the past 12 months, help or hinder? Or do you think it help or hinders the cause for which the people rallied here for today?
I don't think it has an effect. In fact, I think people who maybe don't know the full story of Australia are more likely to go with what the crowd is doing, which is generally to celebrate it. And so if they want to be seen as integrating, then perhaps their first thought is, maybe I shouldn't get angry at a country that I'm trying to immigrate to. So that would probably be my first thought. I don't know very many people who are immigrants who come to these rallies, although I do know a couple. The majority of them don't, because they don't want to upset the status quo. And I think that's something that they've learned from other Australians, which is don't upset the status quo. That's probably what I'd say. So I don't know if that's completely related to how much engagement there is at rallies like these. I don't think people should be deported from Australia. I don't think people should be held at Nauru or Manus Island. I don't think any of those solutions are productive, and it's an international crime against humanity to deny asylum to those who need it from countries who are war torn. I know someone personally from Saudi Arabia. He hated it there. He's very lucky to get out. He's been in Australia for 5 years. He loves it here. And there's plenty of examples of that. As for immigration as an idea in general, I'm all for immigration. I think people should be able to live wherever they want. And I'm yet to really hear any good arguments against that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is there a reason why I shouldn't believe that we can have people from Pakistan living here, or people from Uruguay living here, or people from, I don't know, Chile, or from Canada, and if so, like, why do we deny one country on top of different ones?
I don't necessarily think there should be a discrimination of which countries people come from, but I am particularly concerned with the rate of immigration overall. It doesn't matter who's coming from which countries, the overall rate of immigration and how it's impacting us economically in the short term right here and now. I am particularly concerned about that.
How is it impacting us economically?
There's an impact on housing affordability, for example. Now,
do you think immigrants are buying houses? You think immigrants are buying houses? Who owns the majority of real estate in Australia?
So where people live, it's either they buy them and own them, or they're renting. And I've heard some pretty sorry state stories of, say on a particular Saturday, they've opened a unit for inspection, and I've seen, social media videos of these long queues of people getting in just to check out a very humble apartment unit. That's what I'm more concerned about
Gotcha.
The impact of immigration if it's not controlled. And this is not about, we should take more from a particular country of another.
So
I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about the overall impact.
So you know that 9.8% of all of Sydney's houses are empty.
That's part of your housing.
Well, that's
400
at the very least, 400,000 houses, let alone whether they have space for more than one occupant, which most of them would. So you would have an extra 1 million houses, even if you'd have an extra accommodation for 1 million people, which is
that's particularly concerning.
Yeah, well then that's not an immigration specific issue then. That's more of an issue specific with who owns the housing and what real estate means as an investment from wealthy, let's call them quote unquote entrepreneurs. So you and I would be in agreement on that one. I think there should be a limit on how many houses or properties that someone should own.
I think on both issues, I acknowledge both issues, yeah.
Well, but what do you mean you acknowledge both issues? Do you think the immigration one
rate
is
issue, and there's an issue that you just raised about?
Do you think do you think they're equal? Do you think one's more than the other, or one's less than the other?
They're both issues. They need to be discussed.
You want some stats? Who wants stats? Let me add some stats.
Yeah,
2013 Foreign Investment Review Board. This was a shocking stat when it happened. 90% of all new housing supply was ended up being approved by the Housing Investment Review Board. Something I'll say about the Foreign Investment Review Board, we will more automatically jump, it's Chinese investors. No, in 2016, the number one foreign investor?
Americans, right?
So you've both got points here, because there is also, I can only offer anecdotal trend towards this when you speak to real estate agents, is that migrant investors tend towards what you describe accurately as lockups. You buy it and you hope it'll go up. It's like buying gold. Will a Gold Coast apartment go up? Will a Sydney foreshore apartment go up? You buy it, you lock it up, because with rental yields...
what percentage is it migrants?
So with rental yields so low, it's not worth renting out because the risk to your investment is more than the reward of a 1%. And as I said, an anecdotal trend, correlation, whatever you want to call it, that it tends towards, foreign investors tend towards buying and leaving vacant. Local investors tend towards. I'd love to give you some stats on that one, but I can only give you those on foreign investment.
So you mentioned that migrants have a tendency to buy and then use it as investment. But don't people who also were born in Australia do that?
It's about a tendency. It's about trends, not necessarily about a 1 or a 0. Of course, both do.
But hang on, there are less migrants in Australia, so of course that more houses are going to be bought by migrants.
I can add something to your.
That's it.
Sorry, I've got something to add to your trends. I went to a recent housing forum, a local idiot member, a local spender. She got Malcolm Turnbull's wife on stage, and she's like a pension fund sort of queen. She's very hooked into the banking industry. And she was talking glowingly about how they want to buy up all the public areas, like say on top of Edgecliff Station, and then all their mates from BlackRock and all the pension funds are going to build big towers, big B boxes where people can live in tiny little boxes, and it's called build to rent. It's a whole new title. Like,
but at least it's somewhere to live, right? Rather than a shared room, which is what so many are in.
Wait, and it will be owned forever by the pension funds. So the big banks will own it forever, and then you'll just rent it. No one can ever own it for themselves. Like no one can ever have a hope to have that be their own little business.
Well, that's pretty bad, to be honest.
Agreed.
I don't like the idea of BlackRock owning more real estate than they already do.
The stats I was bringing up broadly supported both of the points. Is that concerns about immigration because of foreign investment, and a concern I think about countries where they can own Australian property, but Australians can't own their property, and also a sincere concern about 1 in 10 being vacant.
Yep.
When we're at a vacancy rate of coming up on 1%, like 1.4%, I'm not questioning your data. I'm correlating and agreeing with it that how can we have a status where some fee surely must be reasonable
it's easy. You limit the amount of properties that people can have to their name. In the same, like I know that puts a ceiling to a certain level amount of growth or wealth that someone can have. But let's put it bluntly, right? We are not billionaires who will suffer under this. We are not even 100 millionaires who will suffer. Probably not even 10 million worth to our name. So that makes me wonder why it's common for people to go, oh, I don't know if you can limit someone having more than $50 million to their name. That seems kind of messed up. How?
Could I offer some alternatives?
No more than 5 properties. Done. You got a big family, and you want to support your family. Cool. And you've got different areas of your family. Okay, cool. This part lives in one house, and then this part lives in one house, and then maybe you've got your beach house, and then maybe you've got the house that you live in one city, and then maybe you've got the house that you live in while you're in Singapore or whatever. That is like enough. And if that's not enough, then Jesus Christ, what are we doing? If we've gotten to the point where 5 properties isn't enough for someone to feel content with what they have in life, Jesus, is there any issues with this that you'd have? Yeah.
So as a free market capitalist, I have my theories, but what his consensus for his raise, I'm very sympathetic to it because that's the situation is that bad in Australia.
So that's how you'd enforce it. Just don't let people have more than 5 properties in their name.
May I chip in here too?
And even for extremely wealthy families, by the way, that's 5 properties per family. So that's still like that's still like heaps of slack. Still giving it heaps.
May I chip in here? You guys think that will solve the problem because you're thinking that it's a problem that just sort of exists like the weather or something like that you can actually just do something about and fix it and solve it. But I put it to you that if you fix that problem, then the problem would still arise again and again and again because it's not just happening, it's not just a problem that exists. It's a problem that's deliberately created.
Yeah, but we would be able to notice a marked improvement of people who own.
If that happened, then I'll tell you exactly what I think would happen next, which would be that the lobby groups that lobby the government to create this issue in the first place because they make money out of it, and that is the big construction, the Maritons, the people who make the money out of building the things. If everybody has a place to live in and then we're all set, they don't have any reason for new construction, so they want to keep on their profit rolling larger and larger and larger.
That's not true. They don't own the properties; they're selling them to
yes, but their money
consumers.
Depends on new projects to build. If you don't have new projects,
how long are we going to build for?
It ends.
How big is Greater Sydney going to be?
That's why they call it a Ponzi scheme and a growth scheme, because as soon as you put that plan into action, everybody has their own place to live and there are no more people.
But isn't that a bad thing?
These people will lobby the government to just import another million people so that there's more reason to grow.
But isn't that a bad thing?
It'll never be solved.
But Ponzi schemes by default always fail. They have to. That's what makes it a Ponzi scheme. As soon as people start pulling out.
One day it will, and it will be spectacular.
You think that people are just going to the property prices are just going to be worth nothing? The issue with having real estate as being a profitable venture is that unfortunately it's a necessity. Water, food, real estate, medicine, transport. Like these are all things that are inelastic markets. There is always going to be demand for transport, for fresh water, for food, right? We can't exist without these things. I mean, we can kind of if we live under a bridge, but then see cops harassing people, right?
Hunter-gatherer lifestyle, right?
Yeah, in the city, good luck. How are you going to do that? And let's be honest, man, hunter-gatherers didn't live very long.
Can I offer some...
and quality of life was like, yeah.
Back to economics, which was one. I think there's a lot of agreement here between a wealth tax is often offensive, but if it were rephrased into a national investment fund, if you own a piece of Australia, you need to pay for a piece of Australia's upkeep and maintenance. And that's where, rather than going with the wealth tax, which tends to be one view which is not well received.
By who? Why isn't that well received? Who isn't receiving it well? The wealthy? Yeah, go on.
Do you disagree that a wealth tax is not received by
I think
some?
the people who disagree with wealth tax are generally what I like to call temporarily embarrassed millionaires. People who believe that one day they too will be extremely wealthy.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to offer is an alternative of it, within that wealth tax of a small amount. Take, for example, the national defence, which we spend about $18 billion a year on. That needs to be paid by asset owners. You own a piece of Australia, you pay for its defence, and make it purely about defence.
Well,
which most nationalists would kind of look at and be like, yeah, more military spending. Hey, awesome, excellent.
Yeah.
And
I look at it
and most who are looking for housing would say, well, it slowly starts to curve that very top end. Like income, we progressively tax, right?
But it's so little.
Wealth could be, but it's a start.
It is a start, but I don't want to start. Like, you know, we can opt for incremental improvements, but then to just spend it on defence.
But the Fabian Society's been so successful.
What's that, sorry?
In Fabian Society, slimy slice, get little pieces. You can't solve it all in one.
No. I don't think you can solve it all in one thing. There's going to be no single policy that anyone can advocate for. There's a minimum of 5 that you would have to introduce. From everything from minimum wages increasing for necessary people who are working, such as teachers and nurses. Any disagreement there? Should nurses and teachers get paid more?
Then the bureaucrats
Then
departments, sure.
Then currently, yeah. Okay,
yes,
cool.
and they shouldn't be forced to inject products in their body without their permission.
That's a separate discussion to have, but in general, nurses should get paid more, right?
Then they're bureaucrats, yes.
What? Hang on, nurses are bureaucrats?
No, more than their bureaucrats.
Oh,
so
yeah.
In the Department of Health.
You and I actually will agree on that. Like, I think
service staff to admin ratio.
I'm sorry, because my friend who was a nurse lost her job because she didn't want to inject those COVID gene vaccines.
Okay, but now we're drifting far away from real estate.
She is now living on bloody food baskets. Okay. She has to go to the food co-op. She's got nothing, and she can't go back because they're still imposing that thing on her.
So unfortunately,
that's a basic human right.
This is again separate to the real estate. We can't have that discussion, but just for now, I do want to stick on the idea that there are certain things that must be implemented, and there's no one fix all, and that's where this tangent came from. And it's really bad that people have lost their jobs and are having to live on food stamps.
She's a sole mum, and her housing was provided. She was already low income, and her housing was provided through being a nurse, and she has to keep very quiet because she's still in that public housing for nurses, even though she's not able to work as a nurse.
And that sounds like a really tough situation.
She's in such a tough situation.
Yeah, horrible. And generally, whenever there is some kind of housing insecurity, there is often an extremely tough story that led them to that, which is or isn't their fault, doesn't matter. We are still humans, and we still deserve to have basic needs like food, water, shelter, right? I think we can all agree on that.
Right to work.
Yep, absolutely. I'm sure we can all agree on that. So then when it comes to the ideas of having a big pool where we spend tax money, the increased tax money from property investments on defense, why would you defend a population, or rather, why would you? In what world are you going to have increased support for an island in the middle of nowhere that's particularly hard to attack?
We are not hard to attack. Have you ever been to Darwin? Holy shit! The Indonesians are just over.
We don't share borders with countries that have nuclear weapons.
Indonesia invaded Timor and West Papua in the last 60 odd years, genocided the Timorese, genocided the Papuans, want to go over the border, treat it like a welcome mat into Papua New Guinea. And if it wasn't for the US nuclear umbrella, they would have come down and invaded us from the north. They do, they send their boats all the time down, they dig wells.
Okay, but generally speaking, an island this size is going to be kind of hard to conquer. You know? Like, we're bigger than Europe.
Hard to defend, not hard to conquer. You only need to cut the Stuart Highway and you've cut off all the Northern Territory. That's it, you can't defend the north.
Okay, so
you can just, their defence plan, battle plan, is to fight for 5 days.
So fortunately,
and retreat below the Berrimah line. So everything from Brisbane up is gone in 5 days.
Look,
5 days.
Something that I'm noticing having this conversation is I'll mention something very briefly and it will just completely bring the conversation on a tangent, which I understand why you'd like to do, because they're points that you'd like to raise. But it makes it extremely hard to have continuity on the points that we're raising in the order that they're being raised.
Well, if a plank of your logic is wrong, I'm just pointing out that plank of logic...
But now we're getting caught in the weeds of me trying to say no, but actually Australia would be easy to defend, and you're saying no, but Australia wouldn't be easy to defend. We have allies. We have New Zealand, Canada, and the US,
New
just
Zealand
by the way,
doesn't have
right?
a defence force. They're like us.
Okay, but what about Canada and the US? Like, did you hear that bit?
US
Can I cut in?
Yeah.
It's a very simple one. Why did you come today? Just tell us why you come today. I'm unplugging all of this. Tell us why you came.
Because I oppose the oppressive colonization of Australia in the same way I oppose the oppressive colonization of Palestine. I oppose that as well. I oppose that as well. But however, I have immediate connections to both of those places. I have family in Israel. I have Jewish parents, and my grandmother is a Holocaust is a Holocaust survivor, so I'm a descendant of that. My father's side is Armenian. I don't know if you know to those who don't know, Armenians suffered a genocide in 1915 from the Ottoman Empire, which is still denied by Turkey and many other countries to this day. One of those countries being Azerbaijan, who was funded by Israel to conduct another ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh. In fact, Nagorno-Karabakh doesn't exist anymore. What was once Armenia's territory not very long ago has now been colonized, very similar to what has happened in the West Bank in Palestine. I am against forced removal of other countries under the guise of whatever they want to say, of they're going to come for our kids, or they're evil, or they're brown, or they're different, or in some way, shape, or form. So that's what I would like to advocate for West Papua. There is no shortage of countries who experience this level of colonization, which makes this exact rally exactly why it's important to me. I've experienced it in Australia, however, I've been a beneficiary of it because both of my parents at separate points immigrated to here. My grandfather on my dad's side and my grandfather on my mum's side both had to immigrate here because that was their best option. On my dad's side, faced with genocide. On my mum's side, faced with the Holocaust. So the importance of having a safe place to exist without violence is extremely important to me. However, the Indigenous people had that until they were invaded. That's why I've come here. I want to stand with the Indigenous people who do not live in an equal situation or society. I don't know if you know, but if an Indigenous person needs to move house, they need to get written permission from the government to do that. We don't experience that as settlers. We just do whatever. We don't even have to change our license. I lived in Melbourne for 3 years and I didn't change my license. No issues, right? So that's what I've got to say.
Can I reframe it around specifically Australia Day, which Dana has come here to support. Dana, what are the reasons that you come here today to support Australia Day?
Concerns with the Invasion Day narrative. Where we're going with this is the debate. We need to change it to a particular date. I'm not sure there's a consensus of which date to change it to, and therefore the arguments for them. Because what I am hearing is abolish the date. That would be a non-negotiable for me. I'd like to see, all other countries that have their own national days, and we should have our own. But I'm also open to changing to a date other than January 26th if there's a sensible argument for it. That makes sense.
Cool. Alison?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you go? Just please, briefly. Why have you come to support Australia Day?
So that we can respect our history and we can stop being so toxic, only choosing the bad things from one part and the good things from the other part. I think we need to respect our history in its totality and remember this day, because this day actually has that big meeting of the two cultures, with good and bad.
Can I offer one last note on the idea of trying to acknowledge the good of colonization? I think there are very few people who would acknowledge the good of South African apartheid. I think there'd be very few people who acknowledge the good of West Bank settlers from Israel. I think there would be very few people who would think about the good that comes with invading a land, raping and pillaging and breeding out all of its native people, and then replacing it with a system that those people would see to be as superior, those colonizers. I find it very hard to see the good in that. And you know what? There could be nice little goods, like, hey, cool, we found out this like cool water filtration system. That's really interesting. Like, that's going to save lives. Cool. Okay, cool. You've done that. What else? You've introduced philosophy. Okay, cool, nice. You've introduced written text and language. Okay, that's all very interesting. Has it come at the expense of other things? We don't talk about that. We prefer to acknowledge what has come to Australia, what has resulted from black people having to drink at different water fountains, or not having the vote in Australia until very recently. So when we have a narrative that relies on also acknowledging the good, we can do that.
Is it that you don't want to acknowledge the good?
No, we can do that. Like, if
can acknowledge the good.
I feel like I can, but I'm saying that there's very, very little good to acknowledge from a colonized dynamic. If you could, like I'm open to it. Like, if you can think of things that are good that come from colonization, please let me know.
The most immediate example I can think of is he has the freedom as a journo to interview all of us. We have the privilege to stand on this or sit on this nice park and argue what we strongly believe. That's very good. And we're doing it peacefully. Even better. I mean, that's just in this immediate environment.
Things not present before settlers arrived. What, journalism didn't exist? But what were Dreamtime stories then?
I think in most of those places, I think this kind of, call it Greek, call it British, call it Western, whatever you want to call this kind of open debate, discussion, non-use of force. You go back to Burke. I think that was pretty rare. But what do you think? You think it was known?
I think it was very common amongst Indigenous communities of all places, not just Australia, to have forums, meetings, big central discussions in a somewhat democratic manner. Because let's be honest, by ourselves, as a single human being, or even as a group of 5 human beings in a country that does not have running, like, if you don't have supplies set up, you're gonna suffer. It's not gonna be good. You try to catch your food, you try to filter your water, you try to create shelter, all these things, by the way, basic necessities that I think that we all need, which everyone will agree, by the way, as per
but
what I said.
Just on the freedom of speech one, which is the first one that Dan came up with, which in my travels,
why wouldn't Indigenous people not be able to have freedom of speech?
In my experiences living around the world in the modern day, and from my studies, most people, you believe that this kind of forum could occur in other places?
Yes, absolutely. And why couldn't it exist pre-colonial? We might have different ways of establishing rhetoric and philosophies and proving the empirical scientific method, which I believe is a really valid thing, which is why I think we should listen to social workers and people who have PhDs or master's degrees in social sciences. I think that's why we should listen to that.
So obviously the democracy I was referring to is an institutionalized democracy as we understand it. That's why I use terms like journos and we're having debates. And now I haven't studied pre-1788 history in Australia close enough to know for a fact whether Aboriginal tribes could have these kind of forums. I don't know that for a fact or not a fact. I'd imagine, you know, they wouldn't have, you know, state power like we would understand, where people could be policed in a way that we could be policed. So maybe they had democracy, just wasn't institutionalized. I'm not sure.
What are some other benefits that you might want to point out here that, you know, again, back to that good and bad?
So if we go a bit further, a whole bunch of skyscrapers, what does that tell me? It tells me that I know that there's bad to it, and I acknowledge that. So okay, there are workers in all these buildings, not today, being able to pay the bills, for example. I'm not saying that's glamorous. Sorry? I'm sure some of them will be doing some pretty boring stuff that they don't want to do. And I acknowledge that.
Are they, like, you know, digging up, minerals to make spears out of? Are they filtering water? Are they desalinating water? Are they growing food? Are they could be.
Yeah, could be the head office.
But why do we need that? Why do we need that? Why not just have a farmers union?
I think we're romanticising traditional cultures as well as part of this problem. We only see the good from Aboriginal culture, we're only seeing the bad from the colonist culture without recognising that there's good and bad on both sides. And I think, if I may finish, I think we are romanticising pre-contact Aboriginal culture, which was a tribal hunter-gatherer lifestyle, which was by its nature inherently violent. Spearings and capital punishment was the way order was kept. And in a lot of Aboriginal traditional societies, even today in the Northern Territory, they still respect rules such as promised brides, which is when a child is promised in marriage to a much older man and causes a lot of conflict. So I think we are looking sometimes with rainbow-coloured glasses in the past, when I think we need to be a little bit more realistic.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I don't think that we should have capital punishment. I don't think we should have increased violence and one tribe constantly trying to invade another. The thing that I can never get past, though, is land. When, like, this is not going to last forever. Like, we can't just have concrete forever taking up the extra sun, increasing the temperature of the earth because there's less physical shade, right? Even if you didn't believe in climate change, come on, all you need to do is go out to somewhere where there's not many trees and you know that the temperature is going to be hotter, right? And by default, that will have an impact on the land, on the animals that live there. And I think a lot of actually one of the biggest problems that Indigenous people had to face is they didn't have antibiotics, so they cut their foot, they get a nasty infection. I'd be dead without it. I had a horrible staph infection, which would have definitely killed me. People, you know, it was not uncommon for people to die in their early 20s, and I don't think that's a good thing, especially considering how much energy is spent to raise a child. But the main thing that I can never get past is how we use the land that we live on. Is we see it as a resource simply to be mined, simply to be profited off. Which, if we're doing it with water and food, with agriculture, I can understand. But big office buildings, see that? You can, you see that? That's not producing something that humans need to survive. Okay, maybe there's like 500 people working in there who might work for a farmers union or who might work. I don't think so, let's be honest. But let's say even if they were, then I would argue that that's a lot of resources spent to build something that's not absolutely necessary.
So one potential solution, which we touched on earlier, is, well, if you want less concrete, maybe we should reduce the rate of immigration. Less immigration, less need to upkeep the infrastructure, less building of new infrastructure.
Why is it just immigration? Why don't we just tell people who are born in Australia to have less children?
They don't. We have a negative birth rate.
Why is it different to say no asylum seekers? Just, you know, families, you can have as many. If you're in Australia, cool. You've got your foot in the door. You can have as many kids as you want. I think the idea.
Low birth rate, very low birth rate.
What's that, sorry?
We have a very low
But no,
birth rate.
we're talking about the choice to be able to do it. Like in this, yeah.
Australia's birth rate fell below replacement almost 50 years ago.
Okay.
One of the first in the world. So.
Gotcha, but we still have the majority population of settlers, right? Like people, white people.
No, in Sydney, 50% of the people.
I didn't say.
Well, in Sydney, 50% of the people were born overseas, according to the last census. So.
Okay, well, what about Adelaide? What about Brisbane? They don't too kindly to immigrants in Brisbane.
And of the remaining 50%, one of their parents was born overseas. So the people who were born here.
Gotcha. So that's just Sydney.
Are less than
So that's just Sydney, and we're talking about Australia. So if we're talking about national policies, we should talk nationally about the stats. That just simply isn't. We can like I'd love to look up the stats. I don't know off the top of my head what percentage of Australia are first generation, second generation, third generation, or 10th generation from Irish convicts or English convicts back from 1788. It's very I don't know that off the top of my head, but we can look it up if you like. I'm happy to do that now, if that would add more weight to the discussion. Because my general point, which is I feel like is still being contested, is that we don't have a majority population worth of immigrants. In fact, it's not even close. Sydney is an exception that proves the rule.
And Melbourne.
Really?
Absolutely. Melbourne's well ahead of Sydney in terms of migrant population. In Sydney, if you're aged between 18 and 25 and you're a citizen, you're in a minority. There are more non-citizens now living in Sydney and Melbourne than citizens in the youth age group.
Gotcha.
In that field.
And Sydney and Melbourne take up way under half of Australian population. They take
Half.
up like, that's less because Sydney's got
half of a country is not a lot.
Sydney's got 6, but it's half of half though. This is like, and it's not by much more. It's like, 5 or 10, it's like 55, 45, right? It's not 95, 5. It's, 55, maybe 60 in half the population. And then the rest of rural Australia, I don't know if you've noticed, with exceptions of Northern Territory, it's all white, right? And no one's going to try to tell me that Bathurst has a high immigrant population.
Is that a problem? We're focusing a lot on the whiteness of an area. Is that
no? What I'm trying to say is there's this very alarmist narrative of the migrants are coming. They're going to take your buildings. They're going to take your jobs.
We started on a discussion about overdevelopment. Alison raised that we should try and reduce, or it was raised that migration should reduce, and the conversation turned to how white a nation is to reduce white birth rates.
No. I mentioned, well, why stop there with migration reduction? Why don't we just stop or limit how many children people can have? Because that would also have a similar result.
Just in Australia or other places too?
Well, I'm being facetious by offering that as an argument because
I'm carrying it on. Let's apply it in Gaza.
I don't think we should restrict population. I don't think we should say you have got a maximum of 2 children. That seems ridiculous.
No, I don't think that seems ridiculous. Why should some people have 15 children? Why should they have 15 if they can't afford to feed them?
Why should someone have $100 million to their name?
Why should it be too hard for the person here to have a child because they can't afford it, because they can't move out, they can't afford a house, or they can't afford to have a child, and then somebody else can just have 15?
This is
maybe we should have equality and fairness of reproduction. Everyone's allowed to have 1 or 2.
Reproduction. Some people can't even reproduce.
Why don't we have state support for everybody to have 1 or 2, but then you're not allowed to have any more?
So
everyone can have 1.
So because that's the great thing about living in a free society is we are free to make as many mistakes as we want.
Why should we be able to limit housing but not limit kids? Why is one thing on the table and not the other thing?
Well, I mean, you can limit it by force, which I don't think would be received very well. In a way, you can, and that, I don't know if we're going to agree too much on China's policies regarding their population, but just. Yeah, exactly, right? So we can agree on that. But to bring it back to the idea of living in a free democracy, we are free to make mistakes. We're free to drink a case of beer now if we want to. That's totally legal. We're going to hate ourselves after we do it. You could eat a whole leg of ham, right? You're allowed to do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. But of course, there are consequences to your actions. Is it halal?
Sorry.
I don't care.
I've got to wind this up. This conversation will continue. Can I jump in here? Chris, my name's Chris.
Dan, nice to meet you, Chris.
Nice to meet you. You were live streaming on Chris Discoveries. I was streaming earlier. This went into a long conversation, which I think I'm not sure there was a lot of agreement. I'm not sure that there was conclusions, but I just wanted to thanks for sharing the discussion.
Cool. No worries.
Alison, Dana, can I get a final word winding up your Australia Day kind of support counter protest?
I'm happy with police today, and I think we obviously we didn't come to any conclusions with this conversation, but I think it ended up being pretty good, this conversation. What do we think?
Well, this was a conversation. It was great.
I'd like to say thank you for a long and interesting conversation, and thank you for sharing your views, and it's been good to meet you today.
No worries.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I like being able to speak with people where it's in a context where they can't just drop it off and then walk away as soon as it starts getting hard. So again, I'd like to appreciate that. I think it's really valuable to have that. I know that you need to go.
Oh, I'm just going to wind it up.
And the last thing that I want to say is if for anyone who has certain beliefs and talking points, talk about it with people, your friends. Don't just talk about the talking points. Explore it. Go all the way in and see if there are other morals, values, and parallels that you can take from history or other current events that line up to it. Just be consistent in what you believe. We are all hypocrites to some extent, right? We all are. There's no way around it. But do your best to have as consistent values as you can.
Thanks for the chat. Thanks, Dan. What an open, an honest recognition that we really all can be hypocrites in our own way, no matter what it is. With the purity spiraling by left and right, it's remarkable. Thanks for joining us again today.